Principal Dr. Rishikesh Soman, Vice Principal Dr. Tessie Tadatil, Skill Convention Convener Dr. Nilofar Rena, RUSA Coordinator Dr. Anil Adagle, all the faculties of our college, attendees Pan India, and of course, my dear friends. I, Nisi Babu,
And I, Sahil Advani,
students of third year BCom, warmly welcome you all on behalf of Symbiosis College of Arts and Commerce to our flagship event of two-day National Skill Convention 2022 on digital interventions and best practices for skilling India, organized under the aegis of Symbiosis Center for Skill Development, funded by Rashtriya Uchatar Shiksha Abhiyan, RUSA.
Robert Greene once quoted, "The future belongs to those who learn more skills and combine them in more creative ways." Modern technology is growing exponentially with new advancements coming up every day and disrupting the usual work practices. It has compelled the organizations to change and adapt new business models. As a result, it created a skill gap where the skills offered by the employees do not match with the skills required by the employers. This has emphasized the importance of skill development. With this intention in mind, the Center for Skill Development was established in 2015 to skill and empower the young minds. The center has been providing a platform for learning new skills through its courses, workshops, training programs, and other interactive sessions, which equips students for successful corporate life.
The center has empowered youths and other stakeholders with right knowledge, aptitude, and applied skills, thereby contributing in the holistic development of our youths. The center is indeed privileged to host the skill convention both at national and international level. Now, we would like to present a glimpse of the International Skill Convention 2021, which we had hosted last year, and also what we have in store for you for the next 2 days. You will surely enjoy it.
The 2 days National Skill Convention to be held today and tomorrow aims to bring together industry experts, corporate trainers, professionals, academia, students onto one platform to deliberate on interventions related to skilling today's youth. Hope that you all will have an amazing, insightful journey with us. Now, I would like our skill ambassador, Ashwini, to take over.
Thank you, Nisi and Sahil. We are indeed privileged that we have with us a very dynamic leader as our principal, Dr. Rishikesh Soman sir, who has been our tower of strength and who has always encouraged us in all our ventures. I now request our principal, Dr. Rishikesh Soman sir, to deliver the welcome address and inaugurate the National Skill Convention 2022. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this National Convention for Skill Development. On behalf of Symbiosis College of Arts and Commerce, I welcome all the participants as well as the speakers. We are very lucky to have very good speakers over these 2 days, and I'm sure our students will be immensely going to get benefited from them. As far as the digital intervention and skill development is concerned, I believe that is the need of the hour, and I think our skill development center is exactly doing what is needed for the students. Digital intervention or digital platform is how do I say? I mean, it is not alien to us, and we are working. In fact, we will slowly, gradually will not be working on in any other platform, but we'll be working on digital platform, and therefore the skills related to that, or even in the learning process, how the digital intervention is going to happen. All these things are going to be discussed in these 2 days. One thing you all must keep in mind that skilling is something about acquiring a particular expertise. However, it should be supported by overall knowledge, a comprehensive knowledge. Then and then only it will have a kind of growth opportunity. Mere skill may give you the employability, but may not show you the path for growth. So just because you are skilled person, that does not mean you will grow in future, because there is a possibility that if you do not learn further, you will get outdated, because the technology is also changing very fast. However, if you in addition to the skill, if you try to acquire comprehensive knowledge, I believe you will be able to sustain, not just sustain, but there's the possibility that you will grow. And therefore the conventional education, or what we say the philosophical aspect of education, cannot be neglected while paying attention to the utilitarian approach of education. And from that perspective, when you are doing this project on skilling, or when we are talking about or emphasizing the skill acquisition, one should not forget that aspect, and therefore keep that in mind and then go ahead with this kind of convention. I'm sure you are going to be really benefited from the speakers. I officially inaugurate the convention. I declare it open, and I once again welcome everybody and wish all the success to this particular convention, and congratulate my team, my colleague Dr. Nilofer Raina and her team for organizing such kind of convention for our students. So thank you very much, and God bless. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Soman sir, for your welcome address. I am honored to invite the head of Symbiosis Center for Skill Development and head Department of Banking, Dr. Nilofer Raina ma'am. Ma'am is a very passionate, energetic, vibrant, and zealous professor under whose leadership and guidance this center has grown by giant strides. I now request Dr. Nilofer Raina ma'am to give an overview of the Symbiosis Center for Skill Development.
I can't see. A very good morning to our esteemed speaker, faculty, student participants from various colleges in Pune, our guest speakers. The Symbiosis Center for Skill Development was started in 2015, and it aims to skill and empower our youth and other stakeholders with right knowledge, aptitude, and applied skills. The center's vision is to create a skill ecosystem that promotes a very proactive skilling environment in a multicultural atmosphere. The Center for Skill Development, through its application-based pedagogy, industry exposure, lab sessions, simulations, case studies, field visits, have aspired one and all. And the aspiration gap of young minds are being filled by these industry experts, and we are continuously honing the skill of our stakeholders. And they have carved a niche for themselves. I see them excelling in Deloitte, in EY, in KPMG, in Teach for India, and they are truly a global citizen. The center has organized certificate programs, financial literacy session by eminent BFSI experts, industry readiness program, organized workshops, hosted conclave, international convention to bring professionals, theater experts, even our psychologists, BFI experts on one platform to deliberate on issues which matters to all of us, friends. We know the workforce of India has been changing gradually to meet the growing demands of modern industrialization through digitization. With increased access to technology, it is estimated that close to 1 billion Indians, we will have uninterrupted internet access by 2030. Considering that the average age of the Indian population is 26 to 27 years old, the vast workforce available to cope with the technological advancement is a hopeful indicator for the future. Digital technologies, digital intervention is calling on a digital transformation, which is not an option, but an absolute necessity. And friends, let me say, the academia is following the suit. We are with the industry. And in fact, the digital excellence is the new normal. And to make our students future ready, global ready, we have been taking initiatives since 2015. And this academic year, we are proud to host the National Skill Convention. And I'm sure that the 2 days deliberations will be insightful. We'll get to learn something new, something innovative. Our students will be ready to take on to this global competitive landscape. So I wish good luck to our team of skill ambassadors, my faculty, and a big thank you to Soman sir for believing in us. Thank you, friends, and we welcome you to National Skill Convention. You have wonderful, insightful deliberation for 2 days. Thank you, one, and thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am, for giving us an extensive overview of the Symbiosis Center for Skill Development. It gives me immense pleasure to invite Dr. Anil Adagle, Head of Internal Quality Assurance Cell, IQAC, and the coordinator of Rashtriya Uchita Shiksha Abhiyan, RUSA, of our college to propose the vote of thanks.
Good morning, everyone. Respected Principal Dr. Rishikesh Soman, Vice Principal Dr. K.C. Thadatil, Professor Dr. Nilofar Raina, Head of the Center for Skill Development, faculty members, participants, and dear students. It's an honor and privilege for me to propose a vote of thanks for the inaugural ceremony of National Skill Convention 2022 on digital interventions and best practices for skilling India. At the outset, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to our principal, Dr. Soman, for enlightening us on this auspicious occasion. I am also grateful to Dr. K.C. Thadatil, Vice Principal, for her invaluable guidance in organizing this National Skill Convention. I express my thanks to Dr. Nilofar Raina, Head of Center for Skill Development, for taking great efforts in organizing this event. And of course, the CSD members and her student brigade who have made all the efforts in successful execution of the program. I'm also thankful to all the expert speakers for accepting our invitation for being a part of this skill convention. Last but not the least, I would like to thank all the participants across India from various colleges and institutions for being a part of this skillful feast. Thank you one and all. And with the permission of the chair, I declare that the inaugural function is over. Thank you.
Thank you, Anil sir. The capacity to learn is a gift. The ability to learn is a skill. The willingness to learn is a choice. This quote by Brian Herbert is apt for our very first and one of the dynamic speakers for the day, Ms. Antara Badri, to talk on the topic Classroom to Mobile Learning, Disruptions and Innovations in Learning and Development Space. Ms. Antara Badri is a founder of Learning Kosh and a corporate trainer, a BFSI learning and development professional with 20 years across banking, learning, and delivery management. She is currently content lead at Wagons Learning and Consulting. Her passion for skilling people with innovative approaches in 3D, design, develop, and deliver instructor-led and e-learning solutions for adult learners with clarity in conceptualization has been her forte. Being an ex-banker, Ma'am has been a part of the leadership team at ICICI Bank, heading units and teams across branch banking verticals span India. She has various consulting experiences from NIIT, Institute of Banking, Finance and Insurance, Symbiosis International University, empaneled consultant with ICICI Bank Limited, Axis Bank, HDFC Bank, to mention a few. Ma'am has addressed areas of risk management, financial planning, behavioral finance, also made customized training modules for the Indian banking environment, and has been extensively involved in developing and designing content for the machine learning space. In her last role, she had 3 branches under her purview, which are amongst the top performing branches in the country in terms of operational excellence, revenue generation, and employee productivity. Ma'am also holds various certifications and degrees in financial planning and risk management, amongst others. We are very excited to hear from you. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, my dear skill ambassador. Good morning, Dr. Soman. Good morning, Dr. Raina. Good morning, Dr. Tessie, Anil sir, and my beloved students across the nation. I would be seeking a little help from you on my screen share. My skill ambassador Sahil, please put my PPT. Thank you. So, the eternal optimist, borderline realist in me would always like to start on a thumping positive note, that an ode to the educators, to the facilitators, to the trainers, to the teachers. While the health workers were involved in saving lives, our educators were unlearning, relearning, trying to grapple with technology irrespective of age, stage, irrespective of the geographies they were in. A lot of them did not even have access to laptops, forget mobile learning. But the last 2 years clearly show how resilient we are as a clan. So the ode, my respects to the educators all over the world, and especially India, where we do have a demography which is very, very young, and bridging this gap, moving from classroom training to completely a digitalization and managing assessments, managing projects, managing reviews, thesis, everything online was only possible because of your untiring efforts all throughout these 2+ years. So on that note, I'd like to start this National Skill Convention, and a warm good morning to all of you from wherever you've logged in. Could I have the next slide, please? So as my skill ambassador spoke about what I do, I have major interventions in the 2 spaces, which is corporates and institutes. So to corporates, digital learning was not really new. You know, it almost came along with core banking solutions way back in right after the LPG 94, 95. Of course, in its nascent stage, we were getting ready to be digitalized. And as on date, BFSI remains one of the most one who is adopted to the newest technologies, whether it is AI, whether it's ML, whether it's DLT, and whether it's the chatbots, you name it and we have it. So there is an altogether different zone I'm going to be taking you to, because before we start as youngsters, I always believe, and I always start my sessions with, please listen only if you feel there's a value add. Please listen only if you can answer the what's in it for you. So while I'll be giving you the perspectives on what's happening at various levels in digitalization, but you should always be very, very, the antennas must be on for the various career opportunities that are coming up. So because of the entire digitalization, the direct impact is definitely on the career space, the kind of roles that are coming in, all very digitalized. So when core banking came in, the L&D space started doing a little bit. So for corporates, the digitalization is not really a new concept. There was learning happening through the electronic form or the e-learnings as we call it. During post 2020 March, everything within a month went to the digital mode. And for corporates, it's likely to stay there. So am I too happy and upbeat about it? I have my own reservations. However, having working professionals, at the end of it, any business will have to go on. And for business to go on, the profitability aspect will always be a determinant. So yes, corporates completely going back to classroom may not happen. We do not know. It is only a matter of, some time to check the effectiveness. However, right now, 90% of corporate trainings are online and digital. Here we have a good news for the institutes. So quickly, before 2020, we had blended. Even when I came to my home ground, one of my most favorite places to be, SCAC. So even when I took sessions there, we used to have a lot of lab sessions. When we had banking courses, we used to have, checking some games, some simulations. If a customer comes in with this, what will you do? And real life scenario. As Dr. Suman was talking, skilling is just one aspect, but the comprehensive learning, the philosophy, know your customer. You have to know the concepts correctly, and then you can adapt yourself to the newest technology. Technology will always evolve, but the spirit of KYC will not change. There may be additions, there may be RBI changes, but the philosophy will remain same. So yes, we always believe in that holistic learning, and that's where the good news for institutes were that there was a lot of classroom learning and bits of machine or digital learning. We moved to the e-learning space last 2 years, and now we are back in colleges with umpteen skill courses on digitalization that you will be exposed to. Actually, the best of both worlds, I'd say. If I had a list of participants here, I would have straight away gone on my usual mode of asking you questions, but that's something I'd really miss because I'll have to speak here and I'll have to wait for your responses because you all have logged in through through YouTube. So the third point speaks about VIL and IL. So V definitely is the differentiator. Corporates and institutes had an instructor-led learning or training until 2020 or a blended, but come 2020 and we moved into the VIL or the virtual instructor-led trainings or learnings. Could I have the next slide, please? So the perks, as we may go down history, and there have always been situations, whether it's industrialization, whether it's the evolution of insurance, it has been in some problem we've identified opportunities. So even this entire unlearning and relearning and getting tuned to the digital means of learning, all it has been out of the outcome of some or the other problems. And at the end of it, where there is an outcome, there are bound to be perks and pinches. My viewpoints on the perks are here on screen for you. So what has digitalization in our digitalization or mobile learning done to us? First and foremost, our colleges, our corporates, no one had business BCP, we call it business continuity planning. Business could go on. Last March, there were trainings happening for faculties. There was so much of efforts by everyone put together, but see how quickly we bounced back and we ensured that learnings must happen. And that's where I think what it has plugged majorly is the remote learning bit. Whether Dubai to Delhi, whether Kolhapur to Calicut, everyone could attend their sessions. The question here is, was it as effective as it would have been? I'm parking that for now. However, we have to make peace with one fact that digitalization is here to stay, and no one more than your generation appreciates this part. Considering the time you spend online, you should be extremely happy that you're able to learn from your space and at your space. While the entire subject matter, so micro learning, this digitalization has paved way for the micro learnings. In banking, in the BFSI space, there are a lot of topics which cannot happen unless and otherwise there is an instructor. There are situations, there are scenarios, there are case studies wherein the instructor has to address the class sessions. However, bits of it, I need to go back and I need to recheck. I'm not quite sure about the capital adequacy. I'm not quite sure about the RBI's new digital payment policy. What do I do? Sahil, we are still on the previous slide, please. Thank you. So micro learning. In the entire gamut of the course, I will pick up things that I think I need a little more clarity on. I need to go back and check my concepts because that's what is the missing link in my learning. It's an important topic from my assessment point of view. It's an important topic from my placement point of view, for my future studies point of view. So I can very clearly pick up, and I'm sure all of you have done this. I mean, when you all were happily showcasing, and I keep following a lot of you on LinkedIn and otherwise. So a lot of you were showcasing these bits of learning you did through the various platforms. So micro learning, I pick up topics that I feel are extremely relevant to me. My space, my pace, I think we've already spoken. I can choose to learn at the comforts of my home at my pace. It addresses very, very critical issues of learning, a learnometer of learners. Not every learner gets things in the first go. One learner, so the differentiated pace of learning is addressed through this self-paced courses. If you look at digitalization, the onus has completely shifted on things like learner experience. I consider my course successful only if I have been able to engage my learner. Otherwise, the learner in this, so in a classroom, I'm sure all your facilitators, all your educators have mentioned this. Had we been in the classroom, this would have been this. However, that challenge is also overcome by focusing. So there are courses that we develop wherein we ensure that every 2-3 slides, the sessions, there's a learner engagement. Even on the slide, there is so much of dynamic screens, interactive screens, that the learner cannot really skip and not read a particular part. Social learnometer has been, so the second last and the third last point are sort of very close to each other. So I'm sure those of you who spend time on LinkedIn, you've seen the kind of skill tests you all can take. Now, when I look at the employability or the future ready part, there are organizations who very clearly say what they want in you. Apart from the domain technical expertise, the softer competencies, or the KPIs as we call it, the key performance indicators. I always tell, whichever session I address, there is really no rocket science in cracking an interview. You go and do a proper Reiki on what they are seeking, and then you develop. How do you develop? You can enroll for courses, you can speak to your mentors, and you can take these skill tests which are available. Take the skill tests, put it up, put up your digital badges. So social learning is here to stay. If we are spending so much of time on the internet, showcasing what we do, what we like, our areas of interest, whether it's photography, whether it's food, whether it's fitness, why can't we showcase our learning as well? So a very, very keen trend and an earnest request to everyone to utilize this, leverage on these kind of meters that are available. Straight away, if someone asks you in the interview, you've rated yourself on this competency, on this, what is the backstory? How have you done it? So yes, I was exposed to a lot of events at college where I was the skill ambassador and I was heading the technical team. So that's how I have developed. Plus I have a certification from this, plus I have a skill course that I have skill meter from LinkedIn. So, you are not only speaking, but you're backing it up with tangibles. So, and at the end of it, what does it mean for you? I keep talking about the career options, a plethora of options opening up in the digital, in the environment of education technology, whether it is the graphic designing part. So creativity, now personally, if I love BFSI. At the same time, I like a little creativity. So, best of both can actually be accomplished through these edtech companies, where today I am even designing a game for youngsters to determine whether the compliance check is all right. So creativity, instructional designers, graphic designers, the development team. So software is one part, but you don't need to be a techie. There are various options. If you understand the subject well, if you like creativity, you can take up courses and you can act, it's, you're the interface between the development team and the client. So you're understanding the requirements from the client, you're designing it, and the development team with a voiceover and all of that. I will show you some samples for you to correlate it better. So surge in this field means more job options, more opportunities, more diversification. There are people whose skill sets say that they'd be very good if there's a combination of domain plus creativity. So there are profiles, check it out, explore IDs and all of that. May I have the next slide, please, Sahil? With the perks in banking, we always say there's a collateral, and there could be the punches of digitalization. So what could be the punches? What could be the areas that is getting affected with this continuous digitalization? Many spaces, but first and foremost, I think the learning effectiveness. How do I check whether what I am delivering? There are so many cases while I'm talking and I'm not sure what's happening on the other side. So the learning effectiveness does remain a challenge when I'm talking on the digital platform and when I'm addressing a faceless, voiceless audience. So that challenge remains, but are there ways? Certainly. I believe that, if there are challenges, I mustn't only tell you the challenges, but I must tell you how can I overcome it. Well, is it possible 10%? Maybe not. But even if I can achieve 60, 70%, my goal is achieved. So my first challenge or punch of mobile learning or digital learning remains checking the learning effectiveness. Because my education system is in a manner that I only check through assessments, that is flouted to a lot of extent. A possibility. I'm not saying it happens all the time, but there are clear incidents. So how do I? So there are things like proctoring, whether the candidate is moving, shifting, and whether So when I'm completely dependent on technology, it will have a few gap areas. Vis-a-vis, if someone is invigilating, when someone is evaluating online in the classroom, the effectiveness will be better. The next slide, please. Thank you. Yes, one of the major setbacks has been the education goals getting postponed for a lot of people. How do I address this challenge? The superpower of relativity, the human psyche of thank your stars that you all had not already enrolled. Thank your stars that it was no compromise per se. It's a mere postponement. So in the entire work life or plus academic life of XYZ years, 2 years clearly will not matter. In fact, I go ahead and tell people, if you're unsure of your careers, spend a little time just figuring out what you want to do. We cannot just deep dive into a career which we are not happy and just spend our rest of our life with. So postponement is definitely better than a compromise or cancellation. I understand a lot of expectations were set. I want to take admissions in a foreign university, or I want to do this, or I want to, and still on the previous slide, please. Yeah, please wait for my instruction to move on to the next slide. Thank you. So postponement, and these are the collaterals, as I said, the learnings being affected, and the psychological aspects. A lot of us who were very confident when it came to physically meeting or addressing an audience vis-a-vis when we went online. People who had, for the first year students who had just, moved to college, the final year students, yes, that, last year of college you wanted to spend and all of that together, so the adverse psychological effects in terms of the social factor, yes, I understand, and that's there, that is irreplaceable, no matter how much of AI comes in, no matter how much of every other digitalization may come in, human capabilities cannot be matched up or cannot have a replacement. And I think in the entire, the entire pyramid, the worst affected were the differently abled people. The learning for them definitely took people with learning difficulties, people with other impairments did have a challenge when they were going through the digital. However, again, aren't company taking cognizance of this fact? There are a lot of AI interventions where even these parts are being taken care of. Sahil, can we move to the next slide? Okay. So what are the trends in the entire space? You have been exposed to a few, I'm sure. Like, for example, video assisted learnings are not new for you. They've been there. They've been there for a while, and playing a video. The point we're trying to make here is, although the trends remain, they have to be coupled with some form of human intervention. So video, if a video is played and left at that, the learning's gone. However, so people may watch their own videos. However, as an educator, I, at the beginning, set the expectation right, and I clearly mentioned that, look, there's going to be a video that I'm going to be playing, and I would request each one of you to pull out the words you're listening for the first time, or there are n number of ways how I can get the learner engaged. Okay, at video 40 seconds, there's something that I'd like you to notice, and so much you can do. So video assisted learnings have been there, but again, the efficacy is questionable because primarily there are no debrief sessions. There are, the engagement factor goes away. E-learning exists in several layers. The first layer is, one moment, Sahil, I'll tell you when to play. We are still not at it. Just please, yeah. I'll tell you. I'll certainly tell you. Yeah. So e-learning exists at multiple layers. The first layer is for corporates, as I said, where there are modules, interactive modules that have been developed with assessments, with knowledge checks, with enablers like, drag and drops, match the columns to make it interactive. And there's an LMS. So these are not really new concepts. They've been there for decades now. So the LMS is more for the admin purpose, for the L&D team who can monitor which department, like bank or a mutual fund company, lots of departments. There could be a customer facing, there could be a sourcing team, there could be for banks, there could be a credit team, there's going to be a risk management team, various verticals. So every vertical does not need to do all the e-learnings. Depending on my job profile, I am allotted a couple of e-learnings. Some are generic, like I need to know about the bank, I need to know about some of the products. So, and at the end of it, there are knowledge checks. There are again meters that you've completed XYZ%. All that is there. Video assisted learning. Now comes the entire concept of AI. Human capabilities cannot be replaced. And, on a lighter note, we always used to laugh it off that because we have natural stupidity, we need artificial intelligence. So we all thought, there was a school of thought which said that it's going to take away jobs and all of that. Honestly, it doesn't hold true. When AI was introduced in the vertical of phone banking, you know what it did? So let's say 12 o'clock midnight, some customer is trying to reach the phone banking services of the bank. and is in distress. It's a distress call, and let's say has lost his card and is not able to get through the banker to block it and has a lot of balance. Those days, let's say the debit card pins were not required to swipe it. So we've evolved over a period of time. Now everything is way more secure than it used to be even a decade ago. So that's where about 5-7 years ago, one of the top banks came up with AI in phone banking, that the minute a caller calls, I should be able to, the AI should be able to determine if it's a distress call, if there's an irate customer calling, and jump the queues. So what is it doing? Is it taking away the phone banking officer's job? No, it is enhancing the customer's experience. Yes, routine jobs, if we feel that routine jobs will not be replaced by machines, they certainly will be, but the human capabilities of whether it is crisis, whether it is making a human being felt acknowledged, appreciated, genuine concern, care, cannot be replaced by a machine. So how has AI come into this learning space? A lot of things. First and foremost, the grading. So MCQs are already graded, automated. However, going forward, there is an effort towards even grading the written tests. There are these very interesting plugins. There are global classrooms for varied language learners. So let's say somebody does not understand English, so quickly it'll give him or her the language that one understands. There are these transmitters these days that will translate what the educator is speaking, and it will also help people. There are such interesting plugins through AI. It will read if somebody, through the facial expressions, if one particular topic a learner is not able to grasp properly, and will recommend or suggest how you can do it, read it once more or once again. Analytics will give the educator that, okay, this part of my course was not absorbed well. I can rework on my activities. I can rework. Right now, we are merely dependent on feedback. Now, feedback, sometimes it works, sometimes it may not. Various reasons, various factors. This is a more clinical way of getting feedback, wherein I exactly know where I can plug in the gaps. Immersive learning with VR, AR, it's happening, and how various places, and especially in areas where complex functions are performed, medicine field, space field. Okay, so how does this happen? Now, complex surgeries, you all know the full forms, and I don't need to tell you. In games and entertainment, you're already exposed to it, but see how it's beautifully even getting embedded in learning. So the immersive learning, people who have to go through experiential learning, the medicos, for example. Now, not every complex surgery one can be a part of. Again, does this completely take care of the learning? Will I be able to hands-on perform a surgery after that? Maybe not. However, am I getting the right exposure? Am I able to at least see through it, read up? It gives me a sort of a pre-read, and then I go and, so rather than just reading about cases, I am able to augment that and take it to a level where I feel that I'm a part of it. Gamification, to address the attention span of young learners, we've tried and made the entire content in the form of a game. Lots and lots of games. So at the same time, ensuring learning is not compromised. So I always believe the fun learning part without learning and objectives getting compromised. So gamification, having games in order to check concept. And I'd quickly show you one. Sahil, could we have the Lost in Space game on screen, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. So there are cricket-themed games, there are space-themed games. So this is one game which says Lost in Space. Please play it for me.
The spaceship Skywalker 4 had successfully reached the moon to conduct a study related to life on the moon. The work on the moon is over and it is time to return to Earth. However, disastrously, the direction to land on Earth has been lost. You are required to help the spaceship Skywalker 4 safely land on Earth by answering the questions. The spaceship would move closer to Earth when your answer is correct. The spaceship would lose its efficiency to move ahead when it faces turbulence because of an incorrect response. The good news is you will get 2 chances to share your response and move closer to Earth. Wish you all the best for a victorious landing.
Okay, so let's wait for a couple of responses. Let's see what they say. Dash is the percentage which every bank is supposed to maintain with RBI in gold, cash, and government securities. There are 4 options. Please let us know which one would you have selected. Okay, sure, go ahead. And press the submit. Net interest income, the primary profit generator for banks, is calculated interest earned minus interest paid, interest earned plus interest paid, interest earned multiplied by paid, and interest earned divided by interest paid. Let's do one thing. Let's select a wrong answer this time and see what happens. You can select the 4th one. Again. Okay. So the first option is the correct answer. The banks earn interest on the notes and the deposit. Okay, this you would be knowing and I'm not going to tell you. That is the cash that banks are required to keep with the Reserve Bank. CRR, SLR, bank rate, and interest rate. Superb.
Congratulations, you have safely and victoriously landed on Earth.
This was one glimpse of the gamification. You'd be happy to know that we do gamification for credit managers. We put them through various risks that credit officers will have to face when they are sanctioning credit files and loans. So from there, we make them play cricket, we make them get into a war. So sometimes we have games on army theme, on cricket theme, so that at the end of it, the learning is not compromised. See, automatically when there are these visual delights for you, where there is so much of interaction, you'd feel like learning. So the entire idea behind gamification is to leverage on the learning agility plus the digital mindset of the youth, plus at the same time the objective not being compromised. And social media in learning, I have addressed this a couple of minutes ago. We spend so much of time, and TED Ed is a classic example of how the entire social media space is being utilized for learning. Even all of you, the minute we have our activities and we ask you to form your WhatsApp group, what's happening? You're utilizing social media in learning. You're discussing your activities. You're discussing your meeting post your sessions on Zoom. All of that is utilization of social media in learning. So while the technological trends look very, very interesting for a digitally agile generation, since you have to work in a space where all of these, would be your core areas of working, the L&D cannot be left behind. The L&D is also getting absolutely abreast with all of it. So I gave you a couple of examples on how user experience is being taken care of. And of course, we are in it together. So let educators and learners come together and ensure that the learning happens, ensure that we take enough, we take a lot of initiatives and we ensure that the learner's engagement is intact. There are so many digital tools available. There are so many methods to check whether people are actually there. We could create buddies. We could create quick online quizzes. We could create, the next slide, please, Sahil. So then we could create in fact, when my trainers are engaging, I tell them beforehand that I'm going to be there and I want to check what are some of the digital practices. You don't need to be IT expert to be a smart educator, but I have to leverage on the technology that's available to me. There are various ways. One works very well is the floodlight spotlight. You throw a question to everyone and then slowly identify the weakest links, ask them, encourage them, egg them to speak spotlight on the spot activities. Okay, you've come back from a break. Let me see, how many of you are around. Quickly, let me know through a hand raise. Okay, what's the brightest color around you? Ensure that they are there. They are there, involved. And I am a firm believer of mystery checking, and I keep telling my trainers, wherever you are, expect me to be there, because if we are not doing it, if we are not engaging the others, it means that the training or the learning is completely lopsided and it is one-sided. So basically, smart educators are those who can create the learning from what learners actually want to know, and using the tools. There are, of course, breakout rooms are happening, and believing in that continual learning. If I keep the assessments for the end, then the entire learning journey will be one-sided. They may listen, they may not. But if I continuously keep engaging, asking questions, drop quizzes, and they don't have to be always formal. There are various informal methods of checking. I just gave a couple of examples on how to check: debrief videos, keywords, time check, and co-conduct. Sometimes if two educators come together, they bring a lot of flair, and one can manage that. These things are happening in school level also. So the assessment based also becomes more continual. And finally, the thoughts are in the last slide. Statistics, as we say, will always speak volumes. The next, so in this entire list, apart from fintech is there to stay, whether it's in credit tech, whether it's insurtech, whether it's the open banking concept, all of it, lots and lots of fintech company. But you see there right on top, we have edtech and two edtech companies in the top unicorn companies. So that speaks volumes about what's there ahead. That brings me to the end of addressing you guys on the digital innovations. The floor is open for any questions. Thank you for being around. I hope you had a value add. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. That was wonderful. Ma'am, we have some questions for you.
Sure.
So the first question is, the virtual approach has taken over the world in the last 2 years. What future do you see in it, positive or negative?
Future virtual world will be here to stay. It will not go away. It will be there. I think I kind of addressed this, that learning efficacy has to be continuously checked and challenged. How do I check the efficacy? N number of ways. I do not keep my assessments for the end. See, it was like, when we were growing up, TV was called the idiot box. It was called a menace to the society. But it's really not. So when there is evolution, when there is, the technologies will evolve as would technology. I cannot live like a dinosaur saying that I don't wish to be a part of it. It is exactly like fire. I cannot let it seep into my personal space, human capabilities. So I have to be very clear when I am chit-chatting with a friend, when I am actually getting the opportunity to do case studies. I should not rely on the digital methods, and I should believe in a classroom thing. But when I want to check my concept on one area, I need to switch. So I will not like to bucket it as good and bad. It is here to stay. We have to learn to use it in accordance to our requirement for that particular learning.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, then we have another question. What are the required skills students must have to make a good career in banking sector?
Very interesting question. I could speak for hours together. However, I would say if you are a youth, start building on your the agility part, the flexibility part, adapting to situations part. Everything else can follow. So the attitude per se, the core, work on the self-belief, the conviction, where you want to be, what you want to do, and then back it up with the required skills. For that, you have all the companies they would put up on the career option, what are we seeking? So they'll very clearly spell out. But first and foremost, figure out what is it that is your passion and what you want to do.
Next question is, how effective do you feel are the skill tests and how much potential do you as an instructor think it has?
Very intelligent question, and I'm very happy it came through. When I was talking about it, if you remember, I gave you three things. First level has to be you feel that, okay, I'm good at it. Okay, that has to be backed by some experiential learning. Like I gave you, you are a skill ambassador today. I'm sure Nilofer ma'am, all your team, all your peers tell you, okay, this is what you're good at. So you believe in something, it's backed by an experiential learning from your mentors, from your seniors, and then you go ahead and do a skill test. So the effectiveness cannot be just that skill test alone. It is a backup, it is an actionable to what you really feel. So what you feel is backed by someone's feedback plus a skillometer. So now it's complete.
Postponing decisions related to career goals can be unpredictable and uncertain and may not work in our favor we thought it would. What would you recommend as to a student to make sure things happen our way?
Oh, I wish anyone could time the future, my dears. You look at all that's happening. Nobody could even speak about Ukraine 2 days ago. 2 days ago, Ukraine's news flipped in favor. Markets started behaving well. Again, today it's gone for a toss. This is how future is. It's a fact. We have to take it with a pinch of salt. No matter what an expert you are, trade analyst, or everyone speaks in hindsight. So my urge to all of you would be that just stay afloat, till the calamity is over. You will tide over it, trust me. But if you get very aggressive and punishing on yourself, it could, impact your future. So 2 years in this entire, we've all had our setbacks. We'll overcome it. Trust me. Don't get too punishing. Just wait for this tide to be a little better. No point learning online your masters. Masters, your MBA cannot happen online. No compromise there. It is meant for classroom coupled with online and digital space.
Ma'am, can we have a few more questions?
Okay, sure.
No,
Sure.
questions.
Sure.
Yes, ma'am. So with numerous e-platforms offering courses, do corporations actually value the credentials issued by these edtech platforms?
Just that, no. When they want to hire you, they would put you through their own ways of ascertaining that. But that acts as the first gateway. Will that be enough? No. But will that open up some channels and doors? Yes.
Okay, ma'am, last question. So, do you think that digital learning industry will grow more in the upcoming years and COVID plays a vital part in development of this industry?
Of course, hands down. COVID has led to boom of several industry, and edtech is definitely a direct child of it. It's going to boom in the near future because the takers are young, they like it straight away.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your time. Over
Thank
to
you.
Sarika.
Thank you, ma'am, for your stimulating speech. Indeed, the insights which you have given to us were much needed in this time. Life skills are an art of living, which helps us to draw a personal and professional sketch of life. This quote by Ranjiv Rajan is clearly defining our next speaker Dr. Pallavi Tak, who would be talking on life skills the entrepreneurial way. Dr. Pallavi is the Assistant Vice President of Oasis CIIE Company. Her expertise expands from sectorial and social incubation program designed for budding entrepreneurs. Her experience as a senior consultant of creative and women entrepreneurship is exceptional. Ma'am was also holding the position of an assistant professor in Symbiosis School of Economics, DAV College and Sophia College of Ajmer, Wadia College, Pune, and Central University of Rajasthan, to mention a few. Ma'am has designed and led outcome-oriented programs, especially crafted for women, creative, skill tech, and social entrepreneurs. Since 2017, Ma'am has supported over 375 enterprises through various program interventions. She headed the DFID's Invent program that supported over 45 social enterprises from across the country. Ma'am leads Women Entrepreneurship Vertical with programs like Invest India Swing and GIST Project Here and Now. She also leads the MUFG Skill Program for Skill Tech and EdTech startups working for the Indian youth. Ma'am also helps the universities design their academic courses and programs around entrepreneurship. Ma'am, we are indeed honored and privileged to have you amongst us. Now, I would request Pallavi ma'am to kindly take over.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction. And I think I loved the pace when you said, I have worked with Symbiosis. Yeah, that was one of my longest stints in terms of work, long back though. Very happy to be back here. It seems like I'm very much on the campus, the SV Road campus. Okay. Well, for today, firstly, thank you for having me here. A lot of, it's almost like a family, Nilofer and others. And with the experience that I've had with entrepreneurs in the last almost 5 years now plus, what I'll attempt at doing is bringing you some of the life skills which I have learned through this journey, having interacted with so many entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, craft entrepreneurs, tech entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs. These are just categories, but I think at the bottom of the whole thing, the characteristics, the requirements, etc., remain more or less the same. So the attempt is to help you with some of the, I just share my screen quickly. Let me know when it is visible.
Visible, ma'am.
Great. Okay. Okay, so a little bit about the organization that I'm working with, and that has given me this opportunity, as I said, to work with entrepreneurs coming from various streams, various sectors, and of course, various cities of the country, primarily the tier 2, tier 3 cities where the problems exist and where the ecosystem is not yet developed. And our task as the organization, as an incubator, is to also help the whole ecosystem build and catalyzed. So CIIE is Center for Innovation, Incubation and Entrepreneurship, and this was actually built at IMA by IMA. The original purpose was actually to assist the students there who wanted to opt out of placement. I don't know how many of you would be keen on doing that. Handsome salaries they wanted to just give away in order to probably look at the other aspects and other aspirations in life, including creating their own venture, probably solving pressing problems that they saw around them. I'll not talk much about the organization because the primary objective for today's talk, today's conversation is bringing those lessons to you, which probably might help you in terms of building your life better. So I work in this domain wherein we help startups. Just to bring everybody on the same page, for us, startup is a temporary organization. It is just there to validate something. And what is that something? It's a business model. And whether you are into a product domain or a service domain or any sector or any region you come from, any gender you come from, at the end of the day, the validation you bring to the table in terms of a scalable business model is going to be the ultimate proof of the pudding for everyone. This is how we learn, and this is how we do rather. So mostly we learn and then we write exams. We measure how we've done in exams in terms of marks and degrees and all of that, GPAs. And then finally, we are building something in life. But in the startup world, it's actually the opposite. You start building, you learn on the way, you have certain metrics decided that this is how I'm going to define my success. For example, this is a pressing problem that I'm looking at and I want to solve this problem. If I'm able to touch upon, say, 1,000 beneficiaries in a stipulated time period of, say, 2 months, with an effectiveness of whatever way you want to define it as, that's how I'm going to measure my success. And if I've been able to do that, I have learned. If I've not been able to do that, yet I have learned because something got invalidated in the process. So it's just reversing the whole thing. And that's one of the most fascinating things that I have learned through this journey and through the shared journeys and derived inspiration and experience of all these entrepreneurs. And this is exactly what we recommend to our startups. Don't look at perfection. Don't look at, being in a position where you know it all, you think you know it all. Rather than that, create the first prototype, go to the market, test it, come back. That's how you learn. So with this, can we learn anything about the way we live life? Can we make that a better thing for ourselves? They said we have only one life. In fact, we have two. And they said the second one begins when we realize that we only have one. So bringing you a few lessons, I hope you enjoy these lessons and these lessons are absorbed by you and you're able to subconsciously bring them to use till the time these are in your conscious mind and they help you in some form and shape. I'll not talk about too many skill sets. I'll only talk about 3 primary things. And here we go. So whenever any startup comes to us for investment, what is our investment philosophy? Which means whether you are at an idea stage or at a prototype stage or at an MVP, which is a minimum viable product stage, or very established scaled up stage, whatever the case may be, what are the 3 top things that we look at besides other things? And this is invariably the investment philosophy and recipe almost for every incubator. We all know resources. We have a paucity of resources. This stands good even for investors, angels, and even the incubators. So be very, very cautious as to where we put our energies, where we put our resources, where we put our attention, where we put our stakes in terms of goodwill, where we put our network, and of course, where we put our money. Right? So these are top 3 things that we look at. And from here, we'll try and derive as to what we probably can learn from here and apply even in our personal lives, whether we are opting to build a venture, whether we are opting to build a career in terms of a job, whether we are opting to be a consultant, or we are opting to be an artist, whatever the case may be. First thing is team, especially when it comes to venture building, team, which really means who are the people. Investments never happen just because there is an idea. Investments are always in people. And the easiest way to understand this is that whether this thing is going to work or not, this venture is going to succeed or not, that we'll see in due course of time. Every venture takes at least 2 to 3 years to sort of stabilize and to sort of get built and so on and so forth. So these 3 years, I don't know how it look like, what will be the ups and downs. COVID actually disrupted the whole market scenario. We say it's so dynamic that each day you are almost, swimming against the currents. You're learning, it's challenging, it's rewarding, but it's very, very dynamic. But what doesn't change is the team that's building. So the core of everything, it's the people. We'll talk more about that when we talk more about the team piece. Second, we look at is the problem statement. What are you there to solve? So some people would come and say, some entrepreneurs would actually come and say, मैं दुनिया बदलना चाहता हूँ, या मैं दुनिया बदलना चाहती हूँ. I want to sort of touch upon 10 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. And I want to do this and I want to do that. But is that really what is possible for one startup? When we know that startup itself has limited resources, limited life, and limited people. So how focused I can get when it comes to defining and articulating a problem statement, how correct I can go with my estimation of problem statement, how empathetic I can be with the people for whom I am solving this problem. Again, we'll come to that in detail a little later. And third piece is business model. In a very few places you would find ideas are getting, pure ideas are getting funding or support, because we all have hundreds of ideas. But in most of the cases, the stakes are put where there is a robust business model. So you're not taking a product to the market, a service to the market. That's not how a startup is defined. That's how a typical traditional business is defined. When you are looking at a startup, it's actually a business model. So you've connected all the dots. And what are those dots? Again, we'll talk about that. So you've connected all those dots. And you are now looking at how this vehicle, which is a business model, is going to take your solution to the market and get that gratification that you're expecting your customers or the people who are actually having that problem are going to sort of look at. So this is actually how of your entire scheme of things. Let's talk about first, and I'll encourage, I don't know whether there are people here or not, or they are looking at, just a YouTube thing, but I'll encourage questions whenever, as and when they are there. First, let's talk about people, which means I am putting my bet on the people. Who are these people? We generally say, are you a CEO or you are a CEO? Are you a chief execution officer or you are a chief everything officer? When we really have to go a long way, when we really have to achieve so much, it really, really matters that there are dependencies built, there are balances built, and there is diversity in the team, in the people who are leading the whole force, especially when it comes to a founding team. So you have to have people with the same DNA. When I say DNA, it means people who are equally compassionate about the problem statement that is there. And I'm very particularly using compassionate term rather than passion. One of the entrepreneurs, I'm sure many of you would have heard his name, N.K. Chaudhary, who has founded Jaipur Rugs. He would always say that, look, it's not the passion, it's the compassion, because passion might die. But when you're looking at people, when you have empathy for people, it will always keep you motivated. And that's exactly how not just the social enterprises, by which I mean the for-profit models with a conscious impact in mind, but also the typical commercial startups will have in mind a very balanced team. So we don't want to do it all because we know we will not be able to do it all. We'll just be bonsais. Second is, even when we look at our customers, how we really reach out to them, how we really acquire them, how we engage with them, and how we retain them, and how we have a maxed out lifetime value of these customers. Because acquiring each customer and making them our evangelists so that they talk more and more about our work, Word of mouth goes out, references go out, goodwill goes out. That requires real empathy and investment in your customers. So, and especially in COVID times, I'm sure you must have seen everybody has come online. And the customer acquisition cost has really gone up because everybody is there on Insta, everybody is there on LinkedIn, everybody is there on Facebook, everybody is trying out anything and everything possible. From extreme remote areas, people are online. So it has brought everybody on a playing level. Now what? What would really matter, or what is really helping the founders reach out and succeed is the way they look at their customers, the way they retain them, the way they engage with them, and that's how it's not really the salesperson in you, but it's really the compassionate person in you that comes out, and the whole magic happens. And therefore, it's not just the funding team and the extended team and the customers, but any other stakeholder that you interact with, including the beneficiaries. For example, you're working with farmers for their benefit, so ultimate beneficiaries are going to be farmers. If you're working in crafts domain, maybe artisans are your beneficiaries. Your competitors, now you would say, how come competitors? But competitive benchmarking and positioning yourself in that whole value chain without stepping on anybody's toes, but also understanding again that you can't do it all, right? So the proper positioning is going to happen when you have adequate forward and backward linkages built robustly in the whole model. So again, looking at which competitors could really be your partners, your collaborators, your upstream, downstream, forward, backward linkage, stakeholders, mentors, investors, partners. So what are we really talking about here is people, and how important this element in life is, and why this is important in life, and what probably we can learn from these startups, these entrepreneurs, these successful entrepreneurs who've been able to achieve anything out there, especially the social entrepreneurs. One thing, whether you call it compassion or you call it empathy. Logically thinking, you would also have to understand the problem statement from the perspective of the probable customers to be able to solve it. Else, from my perspective, I look at their problems, probably I'm looking at it from a whole different angle. So the first life skill probably that I want to leave you with, again, coming from the learnings, a derived experience from all these, working with all these entrepreneurs, is empathy has to be at the root of whatever you want to build in life. You want to find your ikigai in life. You want to build whatever, even personal, professional life. This is one skill, one quality, one attribute, one virtue that is going to take you a long way. Second, what are we there to solve? And what is our solution? Let's stick to the problem statement. How specific and focused is our problem statement? I'm sure you must have heard about this guy called Clayton Christensen, and he talks about the job to be done. So the study was on how we can sell more milkshakes at McD. And finally, they had to really drill down to what these milkshakes do. What is the job that these milkshakes do? Are they there to give you nutrition? Are they there to give you good taste? No, it was found that they were there. I will encourage you to go through the study. There are many videos available there. So it was really there. The primary use of these milkshakes was actually to help these people who were traveling from point A to point B, taking 2 hours or so to reach their workplace in the morning. So these were the takeaways, which didn't need anything to be supplemented or complemented with, unlike, say, a donut or whatever. Guilt-free, that there was not too much of, fat there. Viscous enough that it'll take you almost 1.5 hours to suck it. And also good enough that you have a pocket in your car and it fits in very well. While one hand is on the steering, you can really, make use of this time. You don't fall asleep while driving. So what is that job that needs to be done? What is that problem statement that really needs to be identified and related with and understood from the perspective of the core customer that you have? And I use this term core because, as I said, we can't solve all the problems. We can't solve problems in entirety. We can't solve problems for all the people. We really have to get to the core. This is my core customer. Similarly, in life, probably you can't do it all. You really have to be very, very careful where you're putting your energies. And what is that you're really wanting to do? And then stick to it and see that the results come in time. And then whatever comes your way, of course, that needs to be embraced, but also maybe thinking dynamically, adequate pivots need to be made. Next thing is, when you look at your problem solution or problem statement for that matter, is how you're using the design thinking proposition. This is how a typical design thinking proposition looks like, or a map looks like. You start with talking to people, and that's how you would empathize, you would understand their perspective. And that really drills down to what kind of a PR and communication we have. Here we're talking about customers, and I'm sure you would have heard about elevator pitch, where you probably will have only 1 minute or 1.5 minutes to just tell what you are doing and get the other person excited. In most of the cases, it's an investor, excited about your venture, and allow him to ask and encourage him to ask, get excited, to ask him to ask the questions that are relevant and get the engagement and conversation going. So you empathize, then you go back to your canvas and define the problem statement, and then you start ideating as to what needs to be done here. How can I define and articulate it better? How can I get it more focused? How can I prioritize better, etc.? And after that, it's how you build your prototype. And as soon as the prototype is built, how can I take it to the market? And when I say market, it's not a proper launch. It's just a prototype that you take to the first set of customers in order to get their first feedback. So in the startup world, we don't wait for perfection. We don't wait for years and months before we took any product to the market. We take it at a prototype stage when it is not built completely, at least in terms of aesthetics, forget it. The top elements in a solution, whatever that is required, is all there, but we want quick inputs from the customers. I'll cite an example here. There was this one gadget that was to be built for the visually impaired people. And the entrepreneur was building it, paid attention to the rest of the things, but forgot to pay attention to how the gadget looked like. For obvious reasons, because we understood that obviously this is being made for visually impaired people. And why should they care about what's the color of the gadget or whatever? When the first time we took this prototype to the probable customer to get a quick feedback, besides other things that were there, this guy asked us, what color is it? And we were looking at each other, how does that matter? And the answer was, it doesn't matter to me, but it matters. I can't see it, in that sense, it doesn't matter to me, but I will be carrying it all the time. So it becomes a part of my personality. So if I have to put it in my pocket, I need to know the color of it so that I know what impressions are getting created about me. So that kind of empathy and that kind of conversation really needs to happen as early as possible. And probably what we're trying to say here is that we don't chase perfection in our lives, while also looking at the problem statement in a very, very specific and focused manner, well prioritizing whatever we have to prioritize with a lot of empathy, and that's how you start implementing learning. Come back to your canvas and sort of design it, reorient it, make corrections, make edits, make it better fit for the core customer segment, so on and so forth. And last but not the least, and this COVID has taught almost each and every entrepreneur in the ecosystem across the world very well, is pivots. Almost every startup had to make a pivot, a temporary or a permanent, if not shut down. So sometimes in life, we have to actually zoom in, zoom out. A startup founder always has to zoom in, zoom out, because the startup is not supposed to fall in love and marry the solution that he or she has created, but the problem. And in whatever form and way this solution could be brought about, keeping the problem at the core is what makes sense, or what should make sense to the entrepreneur, and not falling in love with my solution. I can do this, my solution. No, it's not about you. It's not about your solution. It's about the problem statement. And if there is a new problem statement, if the problem statement has a new dimension, which is important, if your solution isn't working well, there is no problem getting a rejection there and starting afresh, pivoting right in time without allowing your ego to come in the way. And that's how probably you have to learn to attach and detach both at the same time, or one after the other, as per the requirement of the situation. I'm sure most of you would have gone through phases where you would have had to attach yourself with your work and then also detach for whatever reasons. But a startup founder does it all the time, zoom in, zoom out all the time. Just like a painter, a painter would be painting, and then, she would take a few steps back just to see how it's looking like, whether it's making sense, or what are the interpretations that one can sort of get from what one has painted, and then come back, zoom in again, and start the work again. That's exactly how a startup founder also does. And that's exactly what it is, clarity. So whenever we are planning for life, how much of clarity we have. And probably, as they say, a lot of times clarity is already there. You know what you want to do in life. It's just that we lack courage sometimes. And as beautifully they can put it, they say, while fear is a reaction, courage is a decision. So whenever you have adequate clarity, if you don't have, it's a good way sort of to go back and get clarity. This is how clarity is achieved in the startup world. But if you're looking at your own self, then probably you'll have to seek clarity in whatever form and shape you want. Once you have that clarity to a decent extent, don't wait for perfection, because if I'm moving from Jaipur to Delhi, I will not be able to see all those 200 kilometers that I have to drive. I'll only be able to see a certain distance. That's enough for me. As long as I have my GPS on and I know where I am heading. In between, I have to take sort of, different paths. It's fine. I'm reaching there. The last thing that I want to share with you all today is a business model. And this is the vehicle that an entrepreneur and her team takes to take the solution to the specific problem statement that we have to the market. And a lot of times entrepreneurs would have, especially from the design background, the entire focus is on the product. But we have to really tell them that it's not the product that you are validating. It's a business model, a model that works well in entirety, a model that is scalable. And why we say scalable, and you could define scalability in different ways, just like you could define success in different ways in life. For a startup, scalability is one of the attributes that they should have. They should be built to scale, whether in terms of volume or in terms of value. In terms of volume, as in how many people or how many units of products or how many units of services you are being able to sell. In terms of value, especially when it comes to handcrafted, say, for example, products, there you might not be able to scale up in terms of volume, but probably in terms of value, because it's all handcrafted. It's just to cite an example. So if you really have to scale your model up, what are those ingredients that are required, and right from the beginning, so that you're laying the right foundation. Similarly, laying the right foundation for our lives, keeping all those components in mind, connecting those dots, having that vision in mind as to where we want to reach. I'm using heavy words, but take it in the sense that what probably a child would like to do. And especially when we say a business model, we tell our entrepreneurs, if you want your business model to be understood in an elevator pitch by an investor, try and narrate this business model to an 8-year-old child. If he or she is understood, you have sort of figured it out, because you would not complicate things. You would keep it simple. And simpler your narration gets, or your narrative gets, means you have sort of sorted a lot of things out, at the back end. One important thing about business model, besides others that we've discussed, is keeping it lean. We all know that we have to be resource smart. In life, we have paucity of time, we have paucity of attention. For our customers, attention span has gone down from 45 seconds to even lower than that. There's so much of clutter out there. You really have to declutter all of that, get focused. So nobody has that much time. Nobody has resources, we know, especially in terms of startup. It has to be very, very frugal in its operations in any and every way possible. It has to be fast and focused, and that's the reason we use a sprint approach. You have stipulated time, let's say 2 months. What can be validated? Let's go and get to the ground, not just to the canvas. Keeping it lean, because of course we can't spend all the resources in terms of time, energy, attention, and of course material resources that we have in something that's not yet validated. Till the time we have understood that this is something validated, and that's exactly when your investors would also chip in, because they know that there are certain risks that have been mitigated, and there are certain parts of business model that have been validated. Now it's a great time to sort of, get there. So validation in the sprint format versus perfection. Don't really wait for you to get perfect, and that's a time you would roll your product or your service in the market. Instead, get to the market and customers for a quick feedback ASAP. There are a couple of other things, but for the sake of this conversation and the time that we have, the last thing to be discussed here is discipline. And I'm not talking about the discipline in terms of getting up early in the morning, because when you have a vision in mind, you don't really need alarms, right? So entrepreneurs really don't need that. There are entrepreneurs who are working in different time zones. They're working till 3 a.m. in the morning and they get up back 6 in the morning. And I'm not suggesting you should do that, or that's a parameter that you should consider to succeed. No, that's your way and that's your decision. But your discipline is entirely in terms of the way you're looking at and the way you're connecting the dots. In some cases, even creating the dots, right? So when we say discipline, one discipline that usually the entrepreneurs are not really very keen on is data. Data is in, what we are learning. Every day we get data as individuals also in our personal life, which is an information that we're getting from across the spectrum. Are we really analyzing it, forming a pattern out of it, and then looking at implementing the same to get our life better, in this case, a business model better? So when we talk about business proposition, or what is the easiest way to define it, we ask our entrepreneurs to define their business model here, or value proposition like this. I sell A to B, B has a problem C, and I will solve C by D. If you can just fill this up, this is just like fill in the blanks. In my life, my value proposition is what? I have an offering, right, which is D. Why is it required? Just like we do it in an Ikigai, something which I have interest in, something which the world needs, and something which the world can pay you for. You need to sustain yourself. What's going to be my core customer segment is really that, because I'm not an ice cream seller really. I can't make everyone happy, and that's not my job, right? So who is the core customer for me? And rest can be sort of be hazy pictures in my mind. But when it comes to really the core customer, this has to be crystal clear. So who are the stakeholders that you want to acknowledge in your lives? And they become your core customers. You have to care for them the most. Rest, as human beings, you can always sort of have your limitations. Again, if at all we can learn anything from here, this is how a lean model canvas is made for an enterprise. You know, to my left here, it is a problem statement. Can I define a problem statement, which is also my calling in life? And if we don't want to use those heavy words like calling in life, what is that pulls me? If there is a problem there that I can solve, is there a gap that I can position myself for? That's a problem statement. To my extreme right is the customer segment, which is the core customer segment, who all matter in my life. It is just interpreting this particular lean model canvas in favor of you as individuals, whether it comes to your career choices or your personal choices, you know. And ultimately, on one hand, it is the cost that you will have to pay. So what are those costs that you are willing to pay? Revenues are your profits. What are the revenues that you want to have in your kitty? And your key metrics is really how you define your success. And these are not to be defined in retrospection, because whichever way we take, we're going to reach somewhere. Is that what we really want? Not really, else we would not be here. So what are key metrics? How much we are able to achieve? Let's not worry about that at the moment, as long as we are happy to leave our ego aside and happy to make enough pivots and happy to pay attention and have presence of mind and empathy and talk to people, reach out to people for help wherever it's there, available. And that's how I build my solution. So do I build my complete solution and then go out? No. I go out when I have done a prototype. I have done at least 3 top features that there have to be in the product offering that goes out as a solution. So I don't have to, if I want to become, say, a professor, I don't have to know it all in the first place. If I have to become an artist, I don't have to know each and every technique on day one, right? I just need to understand these are the top basic 3 things that I need to know. And that's what I'm chasing at the moment. Rest, I'll pick it up on my way. Your unique value proposition is really what as an individual you stand for. They say we all have, you know, a unique personality, right? Again, avoiding those hefty words. Where do you want to position yourself? What is that that you think is not there where you have and you can position yourself, right? So this is your innovation, your unique contribution, and don't measure it by how much it is. Measure it how effective it is. Even if it's very little, to your mind, it might look of no consequence. You don't judge it. You just don't judge it. Unfair advantage is something, say if you are sitting on Symbiosis campus, what is an unfair advantage for you that others may not have? Maybe sitting especially on the SB Road campus. Probably the vicinity wherein there are so many students, so many colleges around. And believe you me, this is a real unfair advantage that I look back, that you have so much of exposure. If somebody is coming for a guest lecture at, say, whatever institute that's around you, you all have an opportunity to go out there and sort of be a part of. Similarly, each day, just checking what is that I have as a gift. I might not have done anything to earn it, probably, doesn't matter. But there is an unfair advantage, and am I using that unfair advantage? And last to the channels. Channels is really where you want to channelize your, in business sense, of course, channels is how you take your offering to the market. It's online, offline, B2B, B2C, B2G, B2B, B2C, whatever. But here it's really what becomes your way of expression. What is your expression? What is the way that you want to give out the world that you have? Is it Is it a canvas and color and brush that you want to opt for? Is it the anything that you can think of that you want to opt for? So this is really what a business model teaches all of us. That's how we can orchestrate all that we have, connect the dots, keeping in mind the end goal, but willing to make adequate changes on the way. We don't focus only on one part of it, but look at it in a very holistic way, almost in entirety. I think I've taken enough time. Just want to go through these couple of entrepreneurs who have made a dent very early on in their lives. This is Amoni, a craft entrepreneur who is helping entrepreneurs and artisans. Entrepreneurs, when I say micro entrepreneurs and artisans, especially the master artisans. So she gets insights from the market. Her belief is, her philosophy of change is that you don't have to really teach the artisans how to design. They know how to design. They've been doing that for ages. But what you really need to tell them is, what is the market trend? So besides having an e-commerce channel, e-commerce platform where she's selling crafts of India, ranging from anything between 2,500 to say a sari, a patola sari of say 2 lakh. Her major business is to create an impact on these artisans, get them the patterns and trends from the market, give them a dashboard where they know what is happening where when it comes to their products, keeping things very, very transparent. I'll not talk about all of them. Okay, this is one enterprise which is in Rajasthan. This was started by one German lady who came to India almost, I think, 30 years back, 35 years back. And she fell in love with these camels who are now reducing in number at a drastic, pace. And that's where she started this startup with these people who come from Raika community. So Raika community is the community which sort of takes care of camels in Rajasthan, and how commercialization around the offerings that they have and how to solve the problem statement that the number of camels is dwindling and the Raika community is migrating in search of jobs and of course landing up doing trivial things, meaningless, loss on both the sides. On one hand, camels are getting lost, on the other, the tradition of Raika community. That's where Camel Charisma was born. This is a startup I want to specifically mention because this was born out of a college project. They come from an institute in the heart of Jaipur that's called an Institute of Crafts and Design. And Radhesh, the founder that you see on my right, is very fond of having non-veg. So one day he was buying chicken and he found that all the waste was actually being either put in the landfills or in the water bodies, and that would create number of kinds of flues. So what could be done? It took him almost, I think, 4 years to build this fabric, which is built or made out of chicken feather waste. And there are 3 kinds of feathers on chicken's body. So all 3 are used for different purposes. With wet spinning, this is spun and then woven. And this is the 6th kind of, innovative natural fiber that was created, a patented technology. So sometimes we really need to connect as to what we are doing at the moment and how we can take this to, the life further. Not sure whether Radhesh had really thought he will be able to build a startup out of this, but what he started off with is a problem statement that he thought is solvable, and he gave his full patience, full attempt, full dedication, and of course rejected a lot of times, took all that rejection in his stride and moved on. So with these, I leave you with these 3 life skills, if we may call that. Of course, the first thing is building a lot of empathy, compassion, and genuine interest in people, and it goes a long way. And charity begins at home. So we really have to be kind to people at home, including parents. That was on just the lighter side of it, but yes, empathy has a very, very important role to play. Understanding the importance of team, college or beyond, work or beyond, personal life or beyond, extremely important. Clarity as to what I want to do without judging whether this is enough, big enough, fat enough, adequate enough, whatever enough. No, if it's there and it is occurring to you again and again, probably it has a message for you. Take that message. And last, which actually emanates from action. Nobody can get ideas patented. Ideas don't get patented. Action gets patented. Outcomes get patented. So we really have to start once that problem statement has been identified, some kind of ideation has happened. We have to start moving with a lot of focus, fast, without seeking perfection. Literally a startup mode, which is a lean startup mode. Frugal resources, frugality, focus, fast, and keeping in mind that all of this has to be kept in mind. So it's really connecting the dots as well we can. Yep, so that's all. I'll be happy to take questions if there are any questions.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We have a few questions for you. The first question is, according to you, what are the prime reasons of most startup failures in India?
Because there are many startups. Everybody is starting up. What you need really to start up is to actually start up. And let's understand, see, not every startup is meant to succeed. Secondly, what is the measure of success? Is becoming a unicorn your measure of success? Is solving a problem to whatever extent your measure of success? So too many startups, yes. Not every startup is supposed to succeed in whatever way we want to define. Wish we could tell in advance. Most astrologers would have had a great time if that was possible, right? So it's only after doing things, and that's why it's very important to learn on the way, right? That you would know in retrospection how much it has worked, right? So, yep, that's the answer to that.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am,
and that should not, just that should not discourage anyone to start up. So failure here is just a learning, really, which means that this is not the way you should approach a problem. That's why I said, don't get married to the solution, get married to the problem if at all you want to get married, okay? So there is no failure really. You just change your strategy. You stick to it, be patient enough, get the basics in place, seek help, incubation space. I'm coming back to incubation space because that's my bread and butter, I'm sorry, but because this is a question related to startup, seek help. Seek help. There is so much of help there available. And don't make the mistakes that you can avoid. That's foolishness.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is, we have seen that the pace of startup development has increased after 2015. So what could be the possible reasons behind it?
Well, we get to see startups. Startups means that you have had a lifespan of not more than 10 years. So in any case, we would look at those startups or those businesses which are less than 10 years. Primarily because there is a lot of government push, maybe. People were entrepreneurial even before that. It's just that we are paying more attention. Ecosystem has started to build, including incubators, accelerators, investors, angels, and so much so that this is now a new way of life and career for many, new way of investments for many, and new way of expression for many, because there's a lot of social conditioning that has now been challenged. Earlier, if one was to do a startup, पापा मम्मी कहेंगे क्यों पैसा बर्बाद कर रहा है, इंजीनियर बन जा, डॉक्टर बन जा, टीचर बन जा, बस बहुत है, right? Now it's taken in a good spirit. There is more freedom, there is more acceptance to the fact that you are now starting a startup. So yeah, it's actually a cumulative effect of government being more active, ecosystem getting built, and the social conditioning that's moving in favor of newer ways of being. Should that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Pallavi ma'am, for your insightful words. Challenges are what make life interesting. Overcoming them is what makes life meaningful. Our next speaker for the day is Mr. Supratim Chaudhary, who is a versatile practicing HR and management professional with philanthropic visionary leadership. He's a self-inspired and self-initiated educationalist and a mentor in management and corporate skills development for youth. Sir regularly conducts motivational workshops and expert talk sessions at Primer Management and Engineering Institutes, Pan India, and so far trained more than 2,000 youth at different levels. Today, Supratim Sir is an inspirational icon for many youth. Sir is actively working as Manager of Human Resources and Administration and Visiting Management Mentor internationally. His competency is to be detail-oriented, administrative, and has expertise in HR system development and creating a research-based sustainable organizational system, and imparting life skills and corporate training. Sir also has proficiency in framing and developing a learning organization. He has also conducted various research studies. Some notable articles of Sir which have been published includes Vasudeva Kutumbakam, The Ideology for World Peace, Education in India, Human Resources, The Soul of Business, 10 Mantras of Entrepreneurship. Sir was also awarded as Accredited Management Teacher AMT 2020 by All India Management Association AIMA, New Delhi, India. In the year 2020, April, Sir was also honored to be appointed as a member of the National Advisory Board of RTET International. We are indeed privileged to have you amongst us. I would like to request Sir to speak on the topic facing the career challenges in post-COVID scenario. Over to you, Sir.
Thank you very much for such a wonderful welcoming note from your end. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I would be sharing my presentation. Before that, I would really like to thank the organizing committee of the skill convention, and especially heartfelt thanks to Dr. Rana for inviting me to this session. And also my gratitude to my previous speaker, Antara ma'am, and Dr. Pallavi, who has really spoken a real good intervention into the present scenario, how the skills should be developed in the era of digitalization. So I would begin up my presentation part. Yeah. Is my presentation visible with you all?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay. So before we begin with the topic of today's discussion, that is facing career challenges in post-COVID scenario, I would like to state that already we understand that digitalization is the most important aspect that we all need to adapt, inculcate, and we have to invest upon. But being a practicing HR, being into the domain of research, what we have found is that a country like India or the Asian countries, whenever we talk about digitalization, when we talk about DG process operation, there is a call for the term change management or process change, operational change. And when this kind of changes occurs, it requires a tremendous and a humongous amount of managerial skill that need to be deployed to make this digitalization or the virtual mode of operations applicable and sustainable and delivering effective efficiency as well as have an efficacy of function. So to do all this, we already have understood that what are the requirements of or why we do need to have a digitalization. That is quite obvious that we all understand today. But my intervention on this particular topic of today's discussion would be based on how we need to manage people when we talk about digitalization, how we need to have a management system that would help for my youths of today to step into an industry with that management skills and competencies that would help them to make their team effective with certainty of their deliverables. So first and the foremost thing that we would go about is, if we look into this COVID scenario, if we look into the pandemic that we are facing from 2020 March onwards, there have been a couple of lockdowns, there have been a couple of unlocking period, and again we have been hit with the second wave of COVID, and so far again the third wave has affected us. So, and there has been a tremendous amount of you can say there has been a lot of anxiety, there has been a lot of uncertainty in terms of medical resources is concerned, which we have undergone, which has already created a great impact on our mind, by which it becomes quite difficult for a person as an individual who is losing their family members and who are losing their nearby colleagues. So it is becoming difficult for them to cope up with scenarios of this nature, which we are not much habituated with. And thereafter, when there is a change in the work model, the business models, the operational models, the process related model, the system related models, it becomes quite imperative for them to adapt to new technology, the new system of changes. Because every time we have been locked in our home, we were being stressed. Every day there was a tension that was working among us. So if we compile this in a very short brief, if we look at that, how we have been affected economically, operation wise, market wise, and the most important is psychology wise. And if the differentiation can be made into two groups, one is the task force of an organization, that is the employee, and the organization itself, that is the combination of the task force along with the business principles in which the particular business house operates. We would see that economically there has been a lot of reduction in earnings, uncertainty in returns of investments, employment crisis which has worked out. And in terms of organization, the total supply chain in an organization has collapsed, increased because there has been a new technologies which has to be adopted, whether it's a manufacturing or service industry is concerned. Now, there has been a lot of uncertainty into the statutory burdens and liabilities, but the operations are not working. There is a whole economic turbulences which has occurred in both the task force as well as the organization perspective. Coming to the operations, the effectiveness of the production has reduced because the task force who are being employed into such kind of process are full of stress. They are being quite uncertain of their life itself. If today there is a working, tomorrow would be a lockdown or not is a question again. So this kind of uncertain behavior definitely has cropped up, and which has reduced the productivity on the task force level. And in perspective of organization, new technology, of remote working system, challenges of adaptability of this remote working system, training needs, new technologies which has to be incurred, which has to be purchased, and again the cost matters because the cells had been stopped or has been burdened for the time being. So that was an operation aspect. And if we look into the market, then there is again, for a task force, there is an ambiguity because of the future market of employment, future market of price of products, future market for the new normals which would come up, which may not be having the suitability of job for a particular task force or an individual because there is a gap of skills and competencies. And again, for organization in the reverse way, the task force who were a part of the organization may have to be updated again. The process of functioning has to get updated. So there is a lot of COTs involved in it. The government statutes are going to change. The international business phenomena has changed. International cross-boundary businesses has changed. So this was a market. And the most important thing that we need to identify is the psychology. How this COVID-19 pandemic has hit our psychology. There was a lot of study which has gone on mental health of people at an individual level as well as on the industry psychology, the subject that we have, the behavioral science. In that region, there has been a lot of study that has been conducted, and we have found that there is a high level of stress, anxiety, aggression, depression, fragile thoughts in the mind of the employees, which has cropped up. And draining them out and putting them into the change management, making them adapted to the change is not a very easy task. Even for an organizational psychology, if we consider the peer groups, the teams which were working on different projects are constituting of these individuals who are having a psychological slash. Now, to make up a project success became very difficult for them to overcome the psychological barriers. Though, by the grace of the Lord, we are doing well and we are step by step going ahead because we have the spirit of, because human nature is to go ahead and human nature, the evolution of human nature is to adapt. But what we need to understand over here is when we are going to step into an industry, for my youth, I would like to address this, that when we are going to step into an industry in today's time, we have to have technical skill as well as you have to know the management of those technical skills. How do you manage these technicalities? How do you manage your team? How you motivate your team? How you make this change management effective? These are the various competencies and skills that are very much important for you that we would be discussing in the slides to come ahead. So if we look at what is digitalization or what is digital skill that we are already discussing in this convention, the first and the foremost thing that we need to understand is called something called digital livelihood. Now, when we talk about digital livelihood, the first thing that should come into our mind is sustainability. We all have been talking about sustenance, and we all know the concept of VUCA, VUCA world. So in a VUCA world, when we had to talk about sustainability, we had mainly three pillars of sustainability. One is called the economic sustainability. The second one is the social sustainability. And the third one is the environmental sustainability. Until these three pillars are very concrete enough, we cannot have sustainability in a succession manner, or the sustainability itself is not going to be a foolproof sustainability when we talk it in terms of business, when we talk it in terms of academia, when we talk it about a new startup. So the first we have to design the sustainable development goal, which are known as SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. And now when we talk about transformation of the livelihood, that is digital livelihood, we have to connect sustainable goals or SDGs with this digital livelihood. Now, how this digital livelihood has to work out should be dependent on the economy of the country, the social pattern of the country, and the environmental condition of the country. Now, if we consider the demography of any region, if we consider the demography of India especially, we belong to such kind of a demography or a geographical region where we are very much rich of our heritage and culture, and we are more socially bonded with each other. Dr. Pallavi was talking about empathy and the people. So it has been rightly said that when we talk about people at a social strata, or when we talk about people at a business strata, we have to understand the concept of emotion. We have to understand the concept of the empathy, and that a human being, by its virtue of human being, requires. How much ever we go digitalized, how much ever we go into the superior skills of digitalization, the superior technologies that we adapt, we get ourselves trained, we make over all the gaps, but we cannot forget at the end of the day, we are human beings. So when we are going to adapt this digital skill, we have to also adapt certain managerial practices, that how we can simultaneously balance between the digital world and the human world, because without the humanity, no sustainable development can take place. And when we are going to be a part of an organization, when we think about growth, first thing is your sustenance. Then you can learn, then you can grow, then you can earn. And that is a sequenced process. So if we have to talk about the very basic fundamentals of sustainability, the first thing that comes is the sustainability of all elements of nature, or rather all the elements, like the natural flora and the fauna, the animals, the human beings, everything, they should have a harmonic existence. It should have a bondage, and that is an emotional bond. And that's what the COVID-19 has massively and humongously has taught us every day. If you think and consider the day from 23rd March 2020, when the lockdown was being declared by our honorable Prime Minister, you would, if you just relate to it, you would be understanding how captive we were, how pathetic was the condition when we were being captive inside our house. We could never imagine this kind of a day that would come to us. So we have to understand that if we have to sustain a business, we have to have a harmonization, because any business you talk about, any business we talk about, it cannot disagree that it is out of the social context. It cannot exist without the social elements. So you have to develop this relation of sustainability in terms of economics, in terms of social, and in terms of environment. And how you connect it with the digitalization is very important. Another most important part is in India, if we look into the workforce, we have a combined workforce of the youth and the previous generation. Now, when we talk about the previous generation, who are in the age of maybe 40 and 50s, the skills of digitalization, the adaptation of the digital mode of working, and the interaction, the interrelatives of the digitalization is quite sometimes becomes difficult, that we have seen in nowadays. We are all computer and tech savvy. That's wonderful. But when we have to have discussion uh, with an online version, and when we discuss an offline version, there is a two different up there. Though online version is much more cost effective, but we have to develop certain SOPs by which we we should remove the impediments of digital functioning, so that the relationships, because we were in an era where we had been talking about relationship management. So when we talk about relationship management, the first and the foremost important thing that comes into our mind is how we are related to another human. So even in a business, it is B2C or B2B. However, the emotional exchange is very important, and that's where is the relationship management is placed over. So if we have to maintain a digitalization world of digital business exchange, world of digitalization, world of digital technologies enabling us to make our operation much easier, but we have to understand one thing, that who is working? It is you or I. And who are we? We are human beings. So the first thing that comes over here is the human being management in context to digital livelihood. Now, when we come to digi management, that is digitalization and how we manage our digitalization. Now, what we have to understand is, in this scenario where this post-COVID scenario is running, there has been a lot of complexion in the workforce. What to do, how to do is the main question, because we are new to these skills. We do not know if we apply a particular technology, how much benefit we would get out of it. Or if you say, what would be the ROI of it and how effective it would be. So we have to understand that presently the workforce that are working on digital changeovers are the people who have been working on physical mode, and now they are coming into a aspects of digitalization. If we look into the core manufacturing areas specifically, if we look into and the work itself, the system of work, the procedure of work, the operational aspect of work as itself has a dynamical change, and we have to understand that dynamics, how this dynamics has changed, and it is varying from organization to organization, from different business model to another business model. So this differentiation has to be understood, apprehended. What are the various changes that can be expected, and accordingly you have to develop your SOPs so that you develop a very agile planning approach. Before, when we had a lot of planning departments working on different planning aspects of physical mode of operation, that was a different way of approach. But when we talk about today's planning, it is a planning which we need to consider the digital deliveries. So when we talk about the digital deliveries, we are talking about how we manage our deliverables in terms of cost effectiveness, in terms of quality management system, in terms of customer satisfaction, in terms of customer requirements. So if we have to manage the digital delivery, we need the very basic principle of an agile planning system or an approach. There are certainly, this is the most important part of a management system. If we go to the very basic of management, the function of management is being told as POTSCOR. The very first P stands for planning. So when we are planning, the planning should have a feasibility. The planning should be achievable. The planning should have goals and subdivided goals, which are going to be divided into departmental objectives. So these are the skills which we need to adapt. So I would request the youths of today who are giving me the honor to address them, I would humbly request rather that start learning how to plan. Start learning how to plan. Because when you plan, it is not always possible that your plan would get success. So having a benchmarking of your planning and how you implement it. Mainly when you plan, you do not understand the infeasibility, if it is already there in the plan, would not come out until unless you start implementing. Once you start implementing a plan, if there are infeasibilities in the plan, it will reflect out. So this practice of planning, implementing, and again reassessing your activities to find out whether the implementation, the output of the implementation and the planning has matched or not. This is the thing that you have to understand first. Now, when we talk about digitalization, there are definitely certain challenges which have been cropping up. That is required digital infrastructure. What are the various infrastructure required in terms of a particular business operation, in terms of a process of a manufacturing sector, in terms of changeover of business models, has to be identified through a valid assessment process. So what is a valid assessment process? You have to have the skill of assessing what is required. Because I am, sorry to interrupt, but I believe in delivering my presentation in a very layman's language, because ultimately my aim is that you should learn to adapt rather than putting on jargons. I would like to keep my presentation very simple. In mid, though I have told this, please excuse me for that, but I would go in a very layman's way. So when we talk about digital infrastructure, you have to know the process or the particular team in which you are working, the project in which you are working. What is the requirement? What are the deliverables of that project? What type of infrastructure in terms of digitalization you require? How you are going to train your team? There is a need of planning in it. So this planning of infrastructure, procurement of infrastructure, implementing the infrastructure, assessing the infrastructure. These are the most important thing that you should learn when you are being into a team of operation. Then building up the SOPs for digital delivery. SOPs, standard operating procedures. When we have been delivering our deliverables through physical mode, there was an SOP which has been inculcated for so many years, and we had come to at least a standardized process of delivery. But now when we are delivering on digital mode, what are the requirements that would come? or what are the requirements which is required? What are the requirements which has to be implemented for timely delivery of your services or product? The documentary part, the documentation, the recorded information part. In any administration, we have to have a lot of documentation, a lot of administrative informations, how we record it, how we digitally archive it. That is most important. And digital empowerment. When we talk about digital empowerment, we have to understand two things, very basic things of HR practices. That is, first, assess skill gaps. You have to assess the skill gaps among your downline employees. Based on the skill gaps, you have to design the management trainings, the programs by which you would empower the digitalization concept, for which you need to consider age-wise classification, the resource classification, and the training classification. And by this process, you can have the digital empowerment among your downline workman or workforce. So when you are going to be executive of an organization, when you are going to go as a manager of an organization, it is expected naturally from you that what are the skills in terms of management do you have? What Ms. Antra ma'am was already speaking about, that when you are being hired in corporate, we need to understand that what are the skills and competencies you have in you which can be excelled. We do understand as a fresher, maybe you will not be having an experienced skill, but we definitely look forward for at least the presence of the skills and competencies, if it is in a budding state also, that how you have an approach towards planning, how you have an approach towards benchmarking, then it is possible for us to make it into a more refined way as when the time goes. So these are the skills that you must adopt upon. Now, when we have been, the main aspect of this today's session that we have to understand is, this was as sir was mentioning, that I have been into a couple of research projects I have worked upon. This was one of the research that I had presented at Dhaka School of Economics, which conducted an international conference on the new normals of post-COVID-19, where we have developed an approach called the 4V approach, or the 4Vs approach, rather. Now, this is one of the most important approach that is required for any management aspirants, I would say, to imbibe in themselves and to percolate when they go for working in an organization. What are these 4V approaches? Now, 4V is specially a strategic deliberation. It is a managerial good practices which can be adapted for productive work culture post-COVID function. And of course, when we talk about good practices, managerial good practices, when we talk about any kind of strategic deliberations, we have to understand two wings of it. Has two wings, the right wing and the left wing. And this left and the right wing always have a continuity. That is, when we start a strategic deliberation program, when we start a strategic planning program, when we start a strategic execution program, it is continuous in nature. And what do we mean by continuous? When we implement, we may fail. We have to re-implement. Again, we may fail. to a lesser percentage than before. Again, we have to work upon it. So it is a continual process. And as we refine the inputs, the output part, that is the right hand side, which is again continuous in nature, will also have a continuity of refining its output in terms of quality, in terms of its desired goal for which it's being designed. This strategic deliberation is designed for. So this strategic deliberation, if tested and implemented in organization, the goal of this strategic implementation is to have a committed work excellence. This committed work excellence is a term which has been adapted from Bhagavad Gita, which says, Yoga Karmeshu Kushalam. Yoga Karmeshu Kushalam. So, committed work excellence. So, we have to understand this committed work excellence that has to come from this managerial good practices. Now, coming to these 4V approaches, we have 3 parts. One is called the management support system. One is the 4V approaches. Another one is the outcome. In the management support system, we have the top management initiative, and under the 4V approaches, we have 4 segments. One is called the value-based management system. Another one is called the vulnerability management. Another one is called the virtual learning management. And last one is visionary leadership. The combination of all these 4 approaches would lead towards committed work excellence. Now, if you see, as I was telling, that the right hand side and the left hand side both are going to have a continuity in process. So it's a continual process where the right hand side and the left hand side is having a continual input and output, provided this middle portion that we are seeing, that the 4 approaches, value-based management, vulnerability management, and virtual learning management, and visionary leadership, will have the best of its combination. Now, if we want to know what are this value-based management, I would say value-based operation ensures that in critical situations, as for this pandemic scenario, every resources that organization deploys should have optimally in use, prioritizing the resources and conscious consumption at optimal levels. With effectiveness is the only way to stop cost drainage. So we must understand the value of every resource deployment. So there is a bar to the cost drainage. The people working with organization needs to microscopically realize resources value and minimize the resource wastage and control over inventories. To combat with the reconstruct the business losses, the task force plays a key role, but now it calls for a cost effectiveness and adding new required values based on skills and competencies to combat slashed business administrative operation and processes and adhering to new normalness of business systems. Now, this was the value-based management. Now, it's the most important part that we've come across is the vulnerability management. Now, it's one of the most important aspects in Indian scenario. If you go to any organization, we see that the mode of team operation, the mode of the team process, where there are individuals in a team, but we have a lot of hostility, there are a lot of egos between the team players that generally rises. But in this post-COVID scenario, if the digitalization has to be implemented and the skills has to be implemented, the first thing that we have to understand, to adapt any change management, the top management, and when you are going to address into a management scenario, what we have to address is the vulnerability management. So vulnerability refers to the inability to withstand the effect of hostile environment. Every organization working with people is an association of individuals' mind projecting different attitudes. One of the most crucial and unenthusiastic attitude is EGO. I term it as edging God out, which is root cause of all impediments of people management at different layers and hierarchy of the organization and causing dysfunctional conflicts. Ego can ruin the system by creating a mental barrier for acceptance of others' opinion and self-centric standalone by one's idea, faith, and thoughts. An egocentric administrative process has never proven to be a long rewarding. So we have to understand that if we have to have an adaptability towards the change from the physical mode of operation towards a digital mode of operation, there is a change management, and this is implemented on people. So the vulnerability, which is one of the major impediments, has to be moved. Now comes the most important part that we have already been discussing, is called the virtual learning. Many organizations has introduced the e-training, webinars, e-learning protocols, but its effectiveness is under still screening. Organization needs to make this learning process more streamlined, effectual, proficient, relative, and motivational for participant. It is observed across the globe that due to the distress and mental agony of the pandemic, the patience of an individual is declining. The stagnancy in life today keeps mind blocking. So many learning becomes a predisposed or futile exercise unless learning is made content friendly. So when we are implementing any kind of virtual management system or digitalization, we definitely have to gap the deficit of the skill gap through training. But when we are training people, we have to understand the content of the training should be such that we are being effective in implementing what we have to implement. The objective of implementation should be covered under the training. That is one of the most important thing. And one of the important thing what my previous speaker was wonderfully speaking, Dr. Pallavi was speaking about the entrepreneurship, in which the main important aspect of an entrepreneur is visionary leadership. What is a visionary leadership, and what is the difference between a leadership and a visionary leadership? How I anticipate the future, how I project the future, what would be tomorrow. A visionary leader has to understand. Again, when a visionary leader has to adapt along with the people's opinion, people's thought process, that every of my employee, every single individual in my organization is a part of this organization as an owner, what we call as entrepreneurship. The concept of entrepreneurship has to be implemented, and that's the role of the top management through its visionary leadership. So the term leadership has now been replaced with visionary leadership. Anticipatory skill, what tomorrow, and how I make my task force ready for accepting the changes for tomorrow and get prepared for tomorrow. That's what should be the main motto of the visionary leadership. And once we once we achieve this 4 levels that we have discussed, we are going to have a massive, humongous positive outcomes. If we look at when the outcomes of a value-based management, improve bond between the organization and its stakeholder, strengthening the decision-making process, value-based decision operation, ethical work delegation, less supervision cost, quality consciousness, and rational COQ, that the cost of quality declines, the cost behind managing quality declines, because we are already having a value-based system, value-based approach from every individual. Then when we talk about vulnerability management, if the outcome of vulnerability is whenever there is the hostile environment is being reduced, definitely the feelings that this is my organization, this is my process, the ownership on the process comes up, and definitely the deliverables from such individual would be much higher. Virtual learning, definitely it is one of the most important thing today, because we have to adapt skills, competencies through step-by-step virtual learning. And visionary leadership is, in short way, if we term it as succession planning. Once you have the anticipatory skill, then only you can call your organization to have succession from one to the other year and the next year. So this process would continue once you have the visionary leadership within you. So in short, if we talk about value-based management, it develops integrity. Vulnerability management creates job satisfaction. Virtual learning management system develops your competencies, and the visionary leadership management creates your future growth. So integrity, job satisfaction, competency development, and future growth combined together is what we expect as committed work excellence. So, my dear friends, by this, this is the approach that we had been talking about today. And before I go to my last slide, I would like to say that these are the 4 pillars of the 4 V's approach, which are human trait based. So whenever we are implementing any change management, or we are going towards digitization, we have to understand the DG management system, that how I manage the digitalization. In that case, these 4 V's, what we have been talking about, are going to be a supportive management system towards your implementation, towards your learning, towards your change management in the organization. And the last but not the least, that I do also practice today, it's today also in the organization, the most important thing, that a student from the very day you start coming to the organization, you step into the industry, or even from today itself, you can practice, is what is called the very known fact to all of us, is called the PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act. Dr. Pallavi was talking about build, measure, learn, which is a vicious cycle, in entrepreneurship development, that you build an organization, you measure in terms of quantitative, that what are the requirements in any department we talk about. I'm not talking about in only to the training gaps and the training need. In any department in common, what has to be measured, how to be measured, and if there are measures, then how we learn to fill up those gaps. So this is what is called build, measure and learn approach, which again can be extended with this particular model called the PDCA: plan, then do, then check and act. Whether it is a management system, or whether you being a student of any discipline, whether it's a management system or you being the student of any discipline, if you adopt this system in your life, definitely it would be a regular practice for you when you step into the industry. One thing that is very important for all of us to know, that one sudden morning you woke up and you come to an industry and you think that you are going to adapt with a lot of skill sets, is not possible. Skills and competencies is something which relates to the human behavior. So if you have to have a true sense of skill, if you have to have a true sense of competency within you, this has to be adapted from now, because it should be an imbibed trait of you, not just an adoption. So whatever you do, you plan. As I was talking, that the PODSCORE, the first P of management is planning. You start planning, replanning, understanding what are the goals that you are going to preset, goals that you are going to keep in your plans, and the sub goals and the sub objectives. Then you do it. Plan the doing also. How should I do so that I achieve my plan? Then check. When you check, first you have a benchmark that you already set up in the first step, that is when you are planning. Then if there are gaps, act upon it. And once you act upon it, then again replan. And this is a vicious cycle that should be there within any management, or rather, I would not go into any management talk. I would say it is a cycle that every single individual who needs to be successful has to do in his life. In the last, what I would suggest, or what I would like to draw upon, is that success does not call for huge business model. Success does not call for huge number of technologies. Success calls for how you set up your mind. What is your attitude? I would again recall by one of my guru, who has always been talking about one of the philosophy which I have adapted. I try to adapt. Sorry, I should not say I have adapted. I am trying to adapt. Is attitude determines your altitude. What altitude you are going to go is your attitude. What perspective you are thinking, what perspective you are planning, what perspective you are executing your plan, and how you are acting to see the the gaps and taking what you can say kappa, that is corrective and preventive actions. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak in this convention, skill convention again. So by this, I would be ending up. Now, if there are certain questions from your end, you may feel free to ask me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. We do have a few questions. The first one is, can uncertainty of future employment affect the process of learning skills for the youth?
Well, uncertainty of future employment should not be a barrier towards learning. Because when you learn certain things, it is always not that through that learning you have to generate an employment. You can think in a different way again. That learning can be used as an entrepreneurial way also. So no learning in life can be determine whether there would be an employment or not. Okay.
Thank you, sir. There's another question. With escalating job losses in the digital world, what careers do you think are prone to vulnerability?
Well, there are definitely the different job losses which has been happening in the IT sectors today. There has been, but again, losing of jobs, again, it's very an uncertain question that what are the areas which will have a job loss or which will be having a vulnerability it's unpredictable. But again, what is the most important thing that we should understand is that the digital world and the IT world is again recouping, and the economy is still again developing. So let us not be on the part of the negative thoughts. Let us think that it is going to have a positive impact and move forward. That should be the spirit. Let us not feel what are the losses. Let us see now how we can restructure, how we can win back. That should be the idea. Right.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much.
That's
Thank
all.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that wonderful session. Your valuable advice on facing career challenges would surely help us. Our very own Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, once quoted that the more we give importance to skill development, the more competent will be our youth. I take pleasure in introducing the final speaker for the day, Mr. Soumya Jain, who is the founder and CEO of iTeach Schools and the co-founder of iTeach Fellowship. iTeach Schools is an initiative to solve the education crisis. It operates 9 free and high-quality secondary schools, serving students from the most disadvantaged households in a PPP model in Pune and Delhi. Sir has done his electrical engineering from NIT Nagpur, followed by a master's at Penn State University with a focus on communications and networking. Sir has also worked in the US for the next 4 years, but being very passionate to serve our country, Sir left his lucrative job and applied for the Teach for India program. Being part of the 2013 cohort of Teach for India Fellows, Sir was committed to teaching for 2 years in a low-income school. He has expertise in digital communications, probability studies, and operating systems. It's my honor to request Sir to please take over and enlighten us on the topic, the role of skills in empowering the most vulnerable youth of India. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon. Can you please confirm that you can see me and hear me clearly?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Give me also 10 seconds to share my screen. And then if you can tell me if you can see my screen as well.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much to Symbiosis Center for Skill Development for having me as a speaker here and giving me a chance to share our view, iTeach's view on skill development and what are we learning about skill development and how it's a key initiative to empower the most vulnerable youth in our country. I framed my next few minutes in 3 ways. Okay, I always like to share an agenda with everyone, so that if I am really boring you, at least you know how long I'm going to be boring you. Yeah. So I'll spend about 5-7 minutes, max 10, on introducing myself and a little bit about iTeach. I'll then go into one of my students' stories, Arbaz's story. And from there, we'll try and derive 3 key lessons about the role of skills in his life and what helped him pull himself out of poverty. And then we'll open up 15 minutes to ask questions. I would really encourage people to write down questions as I am sharing. अगर आप iTeach का logo देखेंगे, if you look at the logo up here, that has a raised hand in it. The raised hand is really representing students asking questions, you know? And questions are the core of learning. And so as I'm speaking, as I'm sharing, I would really encourage everyone to note down questions, put them on the chat window, ask them to the organizers here as well. And we're going to put 15 minutes for questions at the end. So I will try and wrap up in 30 so that we have 15 minutes to take at least 5 to 7 questions as we go ahead. So let's jump in. First part, a little bit myself, a little bit what I teach. My life story is here in 6 pictures. My name is Soumya. I was born and brought up in Pune. I did my schooling at Bishop's and then went on to Fergusson College. For doing my 11th and 12th. Right after that, I moved on to NIT Nagpur to do my engineering, and then went to the US because I wanted to learn more and joined a master's program at Penn State University. Post that, I did my embedded software. I did my master's in embedded software and then joined a company called Lutron. The product there is shown, that's called Serena, which is remote dikh raha hai side mein. That was my first ever product that I worked on. So it's very close to my heart. Really what this company does is home automation. So my specific role was how can people control devices in their house without having to go do them manually, but do them electronically. I loved my job. I loved engineering. I learned an incredible amount of work there. However, I felt that I was not doing anything for my country. So if you're a middle class engineer in the US, you actually do really well professionally. You also do really well personally in terms of money that you're earning and so on. But really, I had this nagging feeling, which eventually जिसको कहते हैं एक फितूर बन गया, कि रोज सुबह मैं उठता था and I used to think कि इंडिया में कितनी प्रॉब्लम्स हैं. आप ऐप खोलते हो, उस पर एनडीटीवी देखते हो, एंड एनडीटीवी का अगर आप ऐप खोलते हो तो यूर लाइक यार कितनी ज़्यादा प्रॉब्लम्स हो रही हैं देश में. एंड आई यूज्ड टू फील लाइक सिटिंग इन फिलाडेल्फिया इन यूएस, all I was doing is commenting on it or maybe donating some money, but really doing nothing at all towards solving that. And I felt like I owed that back to my country, because you can't go to Ferguson, you can't go to NITs without all of that being helped and subsidized by the government. So you're using all of these resources from the country, but then you're going to the US and working for electronics firm there and only focused on your personal growth. That did not sit well with me. So I moved back in 2013. I joined a program which offered me a chance to teach for 2 years full time in a low income school. If you're from Pune, you'll know the JW Marriott on Senapati Bapat Road. And right behind that, there's a big slum area called Janwadi. And वहाँ एक छोटा सा school है, low income students को serve करता है. I taught there for 2 years. I taught grade 6 and 7, and I absolutely loved it. That's a picture of students, my students and me, few of my students and me at Crossword. We used to love going there after school and sitting and reading books. The Crossword owners had got friendly with us and wouldn't mind if we came and just sat and read, but didn't buy anything. Unfortunately, Crossword अब बंद हो गया है, and वहाँ पर एक कपड़े की दुकान खुल गई है, which unfortunately shows the direction that our cities are going in. And that's a pet peeve of mine. After teaching for 2 years in 2015, along with our first brave group of 17 people, I started iTeach Schools, and I'll jump into telling you what iTeach does in about 10 seconds from now. Since 2015, I've been working at iTeach. I've been building the organization. We've gone from 2 schools to 9 schools now. I serve as the CEO currently, which means I spend about half my time building strategy, coaching and managing my leadership team members, managing recruitment, fundraising, all of these things. And the other half of the time, trying to work with our staff and try to see that they have meaning in their work, build organizational culture, take feedback, all of these different things. Let's jump into what iTeach does right away. I hope you're taking questions down as I'm going through कि क्या चीजें इसमें से सीख रहे हैं. Okay, now a big fact that many of us don't know about our education system is that in most Indian cities, the schools, the government schools, matlab municipal corporation run schools, only go up to standard 7 or standard 8. They do not even go up to 10th, forget about standard 12. An example of that is Pune city, which is often called the Oxford of the East, where there are 54 PMC English medium schools. PMC matlab Pune Municipal Corporation. None of them go beyond standard 7. And you can imagine what happens, right? The poorest students of the city are going to PMC schools. They learn there free from K through 7, but then do not have any school that takes them after 7 to finish their 8th, 9th, and 10th. And without 8th, 9th, and 10th, they have no shot at college, no shot at career, and no shot at being a productive citizen of our country, frankly. It's impossible for them to go to a private school. All of you can probably imagine why that is, because private schools जो है ना, वो हमारे students को, corporation school के students को gate के अंदर भी आने देते हैं. They are asked to say कि ये तो corporation school का बच्चा है, इसको मैं अंदर में नहीं दूंगा, forget about taking admission. कहीं उन्हें गेट के अंदर ले लिया, तो the parents of corporation school students cannot pay the donation, they cannot pay the fees, and so eventually they're essentially going to end up dropping out and start doing some menial job somewhere without having a chance at any of these colleges or careers that we all talk about in Pune being the Oxford of the East. iTeach is an organization that is dedicated to waging war on this problem. Our work is really to not let any student drop out after grade 7, and they should be able to finish grade 10, go on to college, finish college, and get a strong first job that will lift them and their families out of poverty. The way we do this is in partnership with the municipal corporation, in partnership with CSR funders, and we run the operations of the school end to end. In 7 years now, we have 170 full-time members. We run 9 schools across the city in different areas, serving 2,000 students. 1,350 students have graduated and are in different stages of college across the board. All our schools are free. And you can find out more about iTeach on our website. I'll encourage the student organizers here to put our website on the chat window. By all means, please go check it out, ask more questions. In the end, I'll also share my email address. You can write to me directly with any thoughts that you might have. So that's part 1, a little about me, a little about iTeach. And now let's jump into a story. I want you to meet Arbaz. Arbaz is one of our students, one of our first students who joined us all the way back in 2017. He joined us in 2015. He graduated grade 10 in 2017. This यहाँ जो white और green shirt में है बिल्कुल सामने बैठा हुआ है वो अरबाज है. Arbaz is father, is a newspaper vendor. Every morning from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m., Arbaz would first help his father in packaging the papers जैसे आप देख रहे हो, in putting pamphlets in it, etc., then go and distribute that. 7 बजे वो घर जाता था, तैयार होता था, खाना पीना का नाश्ता खाता था, and then he would come to school. Our schools, I teach schools, run from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day. So he would be 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. in school. Uske baad he would go home, do his homework, play, go to the debate club. He was a passionate debater, and then go to sleep and start this routine again. Imagine every morning starting with 2 hours of work, distributing papers, and then coming to school. Arbaz worked incredibly hard, both on his academics as well as all the skills that he got a chance to develop in school. When he finished 10th, he scored about 86%. He got into Ferguson College, which is the same college I went to. And he was elected by his fellow students to be the valedictorian, to give the speech at their graduation ceremony. We do a large graduation ceremony after 10th because it's a really big deal. Actually, all our students are probably the first students in their families to finish grade 10. So that's Arbaz right in the center there. You can see he's a debater just by the confidence of his body language, and delivered a really, really strong speech when he finished 10th. He worked really hard through Ferguson as he worked in 11th and 12th, got into BSc in Ferguson, continued to have a specialization in math. And Arbaz now, just 1 month ago, has an offer from Wipro to join their program, which is called a Work Integrated Learning Program, WILP, that helps him do 2 things. One, complete his master's. He's very keen to complete an MTech. So he gets to do his master's from BITS Pilani. And 2, he continues working and makes a steady stipend. After he finishes master's, he will get absorbed by Wipro as a senior project engineer. And that's the reason iTeach exists. To take students who started off there in that first picture, then work with them for 3 years in school and then 5 years as they make their way through college, skill them such that they can get jobs such as these and pull themselves and their families out of poverty. The next 20 minutes, what I want to do is share what have we learned in the last 7 years of running schools. What is the skills that we build in students, such as Arbaz, such that they are able to break this cycle of poverty, get out of it, transcend it. I've summarized my talk into 3 lessons exactly. If you're taking notes, you should be taking notes as lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, and then we'll wrap up and take questions from you. Yeah. Okay. The first lesson that we have learned in running schools and in skill building is that skill building ना बाहर नहीं होती है. It's not कि you can say स्कूल आओ और उसके बाद कोई स्किल डेवलपमेंट सेंटर में चले जाओ. स्कूल अलग से करो एंड उसके बाद 11th 12th में do your skill building at some other place. That's not the way to develop skills. Skill building has to be done in every single lesson, every single day, and every single year of school and college. That's what you see in this picture here. This is a picture taken at one of our schools. And you'll see 2-3 interesting things here. One being students sitting in groups, not sitting in a lecture setting facing the teacher. We don't believe lectures are effective. We think lectures are actually a complete waste of time. It's when the teacher, the facilitator, and students are working on rigorous projects, that's when students' skills really grow. So skills of collaboration, skills of speaking and listening, skills of technology, skills of creativity, problem solving happen when they practice them in every class. We have shortlisted 8 skills. I'm sorry, my internet was breaking down. I'm just going to wait for 3 seconds. Yeah. We have shortlisted 8 skills that you can see down here. Actually, let me just check. One of the student coordinators, Ashwini, maybe, can you confirm that I'm still audible and visible clearly? Can you unmute yourself and tell me, please?
Yes, sir, you're audible. And
Okay,
visible.
thanks. अगर कुछ अटकता है तो just interrupt me and tell me, yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, sorry, just to keep continuing, we have shortlisted 8 skills that we believe need to be taught in every single lesson. They're written down here in my PPT. They say listening and speaking, problem solving, creativity, leadership, teamwork, and 2 which are very interesting, जिसके बारे में हम सोचते नहीं हैं. How to stay positive in the middle of crisis. We think that's a skill that needs to be taught and built. And aiming high, having ambition, having optimism. All of these are skills that we try and teach our students in every single class. And this is just one way of doing it. There are multiple others. I highly encourage you to come to school sometime and then you'll get to see what's happening. But key lesson is, alag se skill building after school karna is not the purpose. In school, in every single lesson, how can you integrate them is the way to success. Second lesson, we have taken some bold choices that I teach where we have made specialized subjects that help skill building. The one on the left is very, very interesting. All our students at all our schools have a weekly design challenge. हर फ्राइडे 2 घंटा उनको पता है कि उन्हें एक चैलेंज दिया जाएगा. They have to work in teams and they have to solve that challenge every single Friday. It's the happiest time at school. If you ever come to school, come on Friday afternoon and you will see all our students working in teams on a unique challenge every single Friday. Here you'll see 2 examples. The example on the left is one where they have to build a model of a smart city and you're seeing them put that together. The one on the right, the second picture here, if you look carefully, there's a little Ganpati there. And the challenge there was during Ganpati time last year, how to build an eco-friendly Ganpati such that वो जो material है वो सारा हमारी नदियों में जाके waste नहीं हो रहा है. It's not creating pollution, but it really stays reusable and it's basically eco-friendly. And so you'll see they've built the model and they're presenting it to the 2 judges. They're the 2 teachers on the right who are judges, and that's what's going on there. They're given the challenge on Wednesday. They have 2 days to ideate, think about it, get prepared, do research, bring materials. And Friday, 2 hours, they have to complete it. They have to present their solution and they have to get feedback on it. When you do this every single week, all through 8, all through 9, all through 10th, you basically become an expert in ideation, in communication, in speaking and listening and presenting and taking feedback and teamwork through consistent practice every single Friday. The second choice that we've made is even bolder. We as a school have decided not to teach 3 subjects. 3 languages, I'm sorry, 3 languages. Typically, you'll know that in schools, SSC schools, there is English, Hindi, and Marathi. We have decided that we do not want to teach all 3 languages. There's just not enough time. And so we've actually dropped Hindi and we've replaced it with a course, SSC certified course hai ye. This is not our own course, which is called Multi-Skill Foundation course. It's a full-fledged subject. Board exam bhi hamare students ka Multi-Skill Foundation course ka hota hai, not Hindi. They do not take Hindi board exam. They take MSFC ka board exam. MSFC has different parts in it. There is construction, there is electric work, there is welding, there is carpentry, there is home science, there's agriculture, there's retail, all of these skills which are real world trades. And that helps students practice skills as opposed to only working on academics, right? How much of our time, if you remember back at school, is spent in reading and writing and submitting long written assignments, and how little is spent in doing real world things. And so 2 pictures you'll see here. One picture is a project that students are doing where they wanted to build a toilet on the roof of their school because their school toilets were just not sufficient. And so that's what they're doing. Imagine if we all got the chance to do this in school, जहाँ पे हम खुद का कुछ construction सीखें. हम सीखें कि cement कैसे use करते हैं, mix कैसे करते हैं, what is a strong construction, what's a weak construction. And so that's what they're doing. This picture on the right here of this student who is cutting wires with a plier is taken 10 minutes ago at our own school. I asked the principal to take a picture and send it to me, and she just sent it to me 10 minutes ago. And they're working on basic electric circuits. And so, जब उनके घर पे कुछ basic electric problem हो, जब उनके घर पे, I'm sorry, I'm getting stuck again, I think. I'm sorry, student coordinators, can you tell me if I'm getting stuck or is it working fine?
So you're audible, but you're not visible.
But can you see the slide?
Yes, sir. The slide is visible.
Okay, great. Then I'll continue. Hopefully it'll get fixed. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so Joe, I was telling you about the multi-skill foundation course, which is an incredibly strong course because we learn how to do real life things such as अगर हमारे घर में कोई electrical problem हो तो हम उसको खुद ठीक करें. If I have to change the oil of my car, then I should be able to go change that on my own. If there's a simple repair and maintenance to be done at home, I don't have to call an electrician or a plumber or a urban company, say somebody, but I'm able to try some of these things myself and do that myself. And that's what we are doing in terms of skill building. The third part that's really important to us in schools, again, just let me ask the student coordinator, are you able to, the screen is changed on my screen?
Yes, so the screen has changed.
Okay, great. Then I can continue. So 70% of the learning, this is research, you can go Google this 70-20-10 ka jo learning principle hai, that says 70% of the learning of any kind of learning happens by on-the-job experience. 20% happens informally when you speak to your peers, and only 10% happens in classroom or in formal learning such as courses or seminars or workshops. And so all our students are required to take internships and learn as they are doing that. Students as well as students who have graduated. This picture here is of Snehal. Snehal graduated from our schools in 3 years ago, and she came back and interned with iTeach in the communications department. And so that's her putting together a report for our donors on how iTeach has done. And we've done different kind of internships. Here, right, मैंने कुछ लिखा हुआ है. Some of our students have worked in HR and recruitment. Some of them have worked in marketing. Some of them have worked as teaching assistants, as PE teachers in fundraising, as advisors to students. But that's the way that many of our students learn, which is through rich on-the-job experience through internships. That's the way we've been building skills as well. I'll pause for 10 seconds here. I'll let you all digest the 3 lessons, take down questions, see if they're making sense. Also, my camera still seems to be stuck. So let me just go try and figure that out in a bit, yeah? So the 3 big lessons I'll revise and then I'll pause for 30 seconds. I'll try and fix my camera and come back, but everyone should take this time to take notes and think of questions because I'll be done another 3-4 minutes and then it's just question answer time. First lesson, skill building cannot happen outside. It needs to happen in every class, every day, every single year. Second big lesson, we have developed subjects to practice skills such as the weekly design challenge and a multi-skill foundation course, which where we have replaced one language. We've replaced Hindi entirely with the multi-skill foundation course. Third big lesson, only 10 and 20% of the learning happens through classroom, 70% happens on the job. And so we're encouraging our students and alum to do as many internships as possible, get real life experience. And that's how you develop critical skills to be employable and to be successful in the 21st century. Student coordinators, I think my video is back on. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You're visible now.
Thanks. Let's wrap up and then move into question and answers with reconnecting to Arbaz's story that we spoke about earlier. Yeah, Arbaz started off distributing newspapers, helping his father do that every single morning of his school life. Studied really hard, built the skills that we talked about, and got into Ferguson College. Did well in Ferguson, used all of the skills that I talk about, whether it's speaking and listening that you can see his presenting, whether it's aiming high. He was not aiming to do anything less than the best job possible that would get to him. He still continues aiming high because he's aiming for a master's from BITS Pilani while he gets a job and does both of these together. He learned the skill of communication and collaboration through all of the design challenges we talked about. And all of this has helped him crack the interview. You know how these interviews happen, right? There's group discussions, there's presentations, there's an aptitude test. He's been able to crack these group discussions because वो इतने सालों से skills practice कर रहा है, and that is helping him pull himself and his family out of poverty and transcend poverty. All of this is possible only if you are able to follow these lessons in skill building that we have learned and practice them consistently. I'll wrap up by saying ऐसा नहीं है that we know everything about skill building or about skill development. We're very much learning, which is why the title of my talk is less that I know what is happening, but lessons that we are learning from our students, from students like Arbaz, and from the expertise that is in the ecosystem. I'll wrap up here. Thank you very much to Symbiosis Center for Skill Development for giving me this chance to speak here. Thanks so much to all the student coordinators who have been working in the background and organizing this. You are all developing super important skills as you move ahead, and that's kind of what my talk was illustrating. And thanks so much for having me here. I'll stop here. We have about 15 minutes more in my time, maybe even 20. And I'd love to take a bunch of questions and talk through those, not only from the student coordinators, but also from the audience. If you want to unmute yourself and ask questions, the student coordinators can help with that. My email address is right here. If you want to take that down, send me an email about anything that I spoke about. If you want more clarity, send me an email. If you want to know more about iTeach, we're also hiring a bunch of people in teachers, in recruitment, in HR, in marketing, all of those roles as we are growing. So if you're looking for jobs, if you're looking for internships, send me an email or go to our website, iteachschools.org, go to the careers section and see if you want to apply there. Connect with us in any way possible. If you want to volunteer with us, help more students like Arbaz, take them and their family out of poverty. All of these things we are very open to, very happy to discuss. Write to me or go to our website and express interest there. Thanks everyone for having me here. Let's open it up for questions.
Thank you, sir. We are inspired by you. Sir, how would you encourage us to contribute towards the society while we are working in the MNC level or investment firm?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example of my wife. Yeah. My wife actually works at Schlumberger. It's the world's largest oil and natural gas services company. It is an MNC as it is classified. But she volunteers so actively in the last 7-8 years with us. Number one, she ran a circle for our female students called Lean In. If you go Google Lean In, you'll see Sheryl Sandberg, who's the COO of Facebook, started this organization called Lean In. And so Gauri, my wife, used to run that circle with our students. She used to coach volleyball at one of our schools. So after her work, she would come and coach volleyball. Sports makes a huge difference in people's lives. She did that. And currently, she mentors some of our staff members as they navigate their careers in life as well. So all of these options are open. Essentially, I would say volunteer, donate, spread awareness about the mission, talk to other people, and yeah, all of these ways are open to come and help. Yeah.
So we have some few questions from the audience.
Please.
How can we increase the enrollment ratio at the primary and secondary level?
Yeah, so primary, frankly, there is no problem. Yeah. Sometimes we think that primary students are not going to school, but it's just not true. In India, even 5 years ago, actually, 98% students were getting enrolled in year one. Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, जो हमारे country का flagship primary education अभियान था, that was very, very successful. And so most students are getting enrolled into school. The problem is the dropouts that are happening after that, and that needs two things. One, it needs much better teachers and much better schools. Many students drop out not because they have to go to work or something, but because they don't see value in coming to school. उनको आना ही नहीं है, उनको लगता है कि हम कुछ सीखते ही नहीं है, तो what am I going to come to school and do? It's better if I just take up a job or help my father at his grocery store. So the schools need to get much better. And two, what I shared earlier about secondary schools, right? ये बहुत बड़ा problem है. If in Pune, Oxford of the East, no government school goes beyond standard 7 English medium में, so that is going to lead to students dropping out, right? How is it going to work? So we have to beef up the number of secondary schools we have. We have to improve the quality of schools, and that will automatically ensure the students stay in school. There is no problem if the schools are good and there are enough schools.
The next question from the audience is,
Yeah.
what is your take on the new education policy?
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. Yeah, I am very, very happy with the direction it's going in. I won't comment on the skills part because we've been talking about the whole day, but I love the assessments that have been thought through there. If you look at the policy in detail in the school system, they're now proposing key stage assessments at 3rd, at 6th, at 8th, and then at 10th. And that's a really, really sensible move. If you look at the management and the organization of schools, there's a lot of work on clustering schools. So instead of having thousands of really small schools, they're talking about clustering them and making larger schools because that's just much more effective and quality can be maintained better. I like how they're proposing B.Ed colleges to not be standalone, but be part of a university and be a teaching department of university versus being standalone colleges. I think all of these are really good moves in the right direction towards improving quality across the board. I'm very excited about them. I think there's a lot of innovation that will come in the school system through the NEP overall.
So as you told, skill building is a continuous process.
Yeah.
How to maintain continuity along with one's education or one's chasing his career, his or her career? How to maintain the skill building process?
Yeah. I mean, I think we are like even compared to 10 years ago, the avenues that are available today to working professionals to build skills are like 10x, 50x, right? I would say I would have two pieces of advice. One, you have to be enrolled in some coursework all the time, even if you're working, and continue learning more and more. That could be on ed tech platforms. That could be by attending physical courses, so many different ways. I'll give you my own example. I'm currently enrolled in a finance course on Coursera. And I don't actually do a lot of finance in my daily work. We have a finance team which is excellent that does it, but I'm learning it for the sake of it, yeah. And just because I'm learning so much through it. So it's a couple of hours a week, but it's great. It's just so much fun. And I'm considering this course in mountaineering by Giri Premi. And again, it's not like I want to become a mountaineer or I want to go climb Mount Everest or something like that. But you learn so many new things. You meet so many new people if you're trying some of these things. So I would highly recommend being enrolled in couple of courses at all times. It doesn't have to be in your college, right? It can be in so many different places. And secondly, I would say give 3 to 4 hours of your week every single week in working in organizations that are different from your own work, and that I was just sharing from volunteering and things like that, right? So for example, if you volunteer with iTeach as a teaching assistant, you will learn so much about education. You learn so much about teaching. You learn so much about facilitation, about addressing large groups of students. Jo shayad if you are a software engineer, you won't have the chance to do. So I think two ways. I think one, by enrolling in coursework 2 to 3 hours a week, and by volunteering and working in organizations different from yours for 3 to 4 hours a week. But the crux is every week 6 से 7 घंटा निकालना बहुत जरूरी है if you are hoping to continually upskill yourself. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
great.
Okay, so we have a next question.
Yeah.
What are the primary changes you want to see in the Indian education system?
So many. Difficult to shortlist a few. Give me 10 seconds to synthesize, yeah? Yeah. I think the first one is the Indian education system is massively hierarchical. So what that means is there is a huge power dynamic between the student and the teacher. In one line, if I was to say, I think teachers need to not be a sage on the stage, but they need to be a guide by the side. And that's the exact opposite of what happens today, right? Even the way you are addressing me, why do you have to call me sir? Yeah. like क्या जरूरत है मुझे सर बोलने की, why are you not able to address me as Soumya and move ahead? This is just hierarchy, right? It's completely unnecessary hierarchy. And I would like to see that go away and students being partners in education. Do you think I can share one picture in 10 seconds? Is that possible?
Yes, sir,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Give me 10 seconds to find a picture and it'll illustrate my point. It'll illustrate my point well. 10 seconds, yeah. Since we have time, I know I'm doing well on time, so I can pull up a picture and take some time. They also say a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So here. Okay. I'm sorry, what is your name?
My name is Ashwini.
Ashwini. Okay. So Ashwini, just tell me, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, I can see us.
Okay, great. Are you seeing a picture on it of 3 kids cycling?
Yes. It's
Okay, great. So this is what in my head is happening today. Huh? There are 3 students. They all have very different needs, and the needs are shown by the path. Look at the road that they are on. Like their roads are very different, right? Ashwini, what is the middle one's road like?
smooth. There's no
Exactly.
distractions.
Superb. And the one on the left, the student in the blue t-shirt.
Small stones in between.
So it's a rough road, right? It's going to be more difficult to cycle there. But what happens today is तीनों के cycles, are you seeing the cycles are different or are you seeing the same cycle?
It's the same. The same
And
thing.
that's a problem, right? Everyone today gets the same kind of inputs, yeah. Everyone is put in the same kind of class. Everyone has the same kind of lecture, gives the same kind of exam, gets the same kind of treatment in school, and that doesn't work because each of us is very different and we need very different things. It depends on what kind of households we come from. It depends on what kind of family support we have, and the school system has to be different, right? And so if you go to the second one now, Ashwini, what do you see in the second picture? You didn't think you were going to get quizzed, sorry, but I'm sure you're smart enough to answer it. So, what do you see in the second
The
one?
cycles are different.
Yeah, the cycles are different. They're much more sensible, right? Beach wala person has a road bike, that's fine. The second one has a more of a mountain bike. The third one has a carrier, which they need there. This is where some schools, I think ITish is here somewhere. At least we are catering to different needs of different students, yeah. And I hope India moves here much more. But the third one is what I would ideally like for our country's education system to be. What are you seeing in the third one? What is the student in yellow and what is the student in yellow doing?
He is helping the student in blue to push.
Exactly, right? And what are you seeing about the path?
It's same for everybody.
They've built a smoother path. They've rejected the 3 paths, and there's a better path there, right? And so what's happening here is only the teacher is not responsible for education, but the students are also helping other students. And that's kind of what I wanted to say. I would like to see students as co-creators, equal contributors in their education. And that's what you are doing, Ashwini, right now, right? Aapki jo Nilofer ma'am hai, she's not running this session, you're running it, and you are co-creating it for all your other people, right? But I hope this happens to more and more students in every single class. I hate it when the teacher walks in and सारे students खड़े हो जाते हैं and they go in that sing-song voice. What do they say in the sing-song voice, Ashwini?
Good morning, ma'am.
Exactly, right? And I hate that. I'm like, yaar, kya zarurat hai ye sab karne ki? Like, come on, man. So those things I would like to see change. That's one, students as equal partners. Two, different students getting different inputs basis what they need. And 3, the resources being distributed more evenly. The distributions currently are hugely scattered, right? If you go to Mercedes-Benz International School in Hinjewadi, they have a pool, a large Olympic swimming pool. They have class sizes of 10 and 12. And if you come to Sant Gadge Maharaj School in Kondwa, there are 2,000 students studying in a building that's 1/10 the size just because poor students go there. The resources cannot be distributed this way. They have to be distributed much more equitably right now. Yeah, does that make sense?
So it was insightful. It actually made sense. It was really insightful. Okay, sorry. Soumya, we have a
Don't be
last
sorry.
question for you.
Brilliant. You're a fast learner. Thank you.
Okay, last question from the audience.
Please.
Do you think the fortune lies in bottom-up approach?
Fortune lies in a bottom-up approach. Wow. Honestly, I don't understand the question very well, but I would say yes, based on my understanding, like my understanding of the question. Okay. If I was to say what I understand is bottom up, so let me explain what I understand and tell you what the answer is. Is that fair?
Like upskilling
Please,
the
please.
vulnerable students, the bottom-up approach.
So I think skilling is secondary. वो हो जाएगा bottom up. वो करना जरूरी है, no doubt about it. That's what we are all out to do. That's what my talk is about. But my main thing, Ashwini, would be, are we giving voice to the most vulnerable students? क्या उनकी voice consider होती है in this? Like what I would ask you, Ashwini, is in your 8 eminent speakers, what would it take you to actually have called a student who has gone through skilling? Like आपने 8 CEOs, professors, industry leaders को बुलाया है. What would it take such that next year when you do this, you actually call 2 students to share their experiences versus people who are supposed to be experts and so on. So voice is the key, agency is the
So
key.
actually,
Yeah, please.
Soumya, we actually have our students speaking about it in the next
That's
session.
amazing.
It-
That's amazing, right? So I
It's
think
already
that's
there in
what
this program schedule.
brilliant, right? So brilliant. So I think that's what needs to happen more is they need voice. For example, let me give you the example of school reopening. पिछले 2 साल से ये debate चल रहा है, right? Should schools be reopened physically or not, and so on. And honestly, nobody asks the poor what do they want. The voices that are discussed are only of middle and high income parents who can afford to give their children a laptop, who can afford to sit next to their children and make sure they're learning. And even if there's no learning happening, they can afford to put them in tuitions, right? मेरे जो students हैं जिस घर से आते हैं उनके parents दोनों काम करने जाते हैं. It's unsafe for my child to be at home alone, yeah. And they don't have lunch at home. They depend on the midday meal for lunch. So when schools shut down, it's not just उनकी पढ़ाई रुकी, उनका तो nutrition भी रुक गया ना. Like, where do they get this midday meal from? Plus, their parents lost jobs also. Plus, they live in slums. Do you think the slums are safer than schools when it comes to sanitation and hygiene and social distancing? Absolutely not. So the school was safer for them, better for their mental health, better for their learning, better for their food. And hence, when school started October 4th, I had 95% attendance from day one. Day one, no problem, right? But who is reporting this? What is the report in the current media? These parents are hesitant to send their students to school. Parents are saying, next year he bhejenge, etc., etc. And so when you ask bottom up, I think my ask would be, yes, we need to skill, but first we need to give voice and listen to the voice of the most vulnerable and not only of the more privileged. I think that would be the sort of one line there, एक बहुत famous poem है, since I'm out of time. I mean the whole poem you can read later, but उसकी जो 2 line है which says सिंहासन खाली करो कि जनता आती है. It's that. I feel like that's what needs to happen more than, I mean, skilling, yes, but what needs to happen first is agency and voice. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So thank you, Soumya. That's all from my side. Over to Nisthi.
Thanks,
Thank you
Ashwini.
so much, Soumya, for that thought-provoking and inspiring words. Really, we are privileged, in fact, to hear a lot from you and learn, actually. Thank you so much. And now, friends,
Julia.
moving further, it's time to know our skill ambassadors and skill coordinators of Symbiosis Center for Skill Development. We, as the youth of India, would like to give our perspective on what it means to be a skilled young brigade. Over to Sahil to present the same. My journey from being a mere student to a course coordinator and now a core member of Symbiosis Center for Skill Development has been amazing and fulfilling. Achieving small wins every day, being disciplined in life, and facing every challenges with positivity are important attributes to be discussed when it comes to skills a person must possess. We, skill ambassadors and skill coordinators of Symbiosis Center for Skill Development, would like to present before you different perspective of skills as a youth of India.
I might not be a poet, yet I'm trying to string the words together, which will tell you more about me. Working with different people under different circumstances have opened my eyes to experiences that I shall remember forever. All the memories I've made will forever be ingrained in my mind. Having patience towards others and putting all my efforts to always deliver the best are just some of the things that I've learned so far. And I'm sure I'll learn much more as the time goes on. Thank you.
It's such a beautiful feeling to be able to connect with people through your art, even without being around them. The way we consume content, the way we express our art these days has changed drastically. We don't read stories anymore, we listen to them. But imagine if it wasn't for the storyteller, if it wasn't for the narrator, these stories would have never been heard.
Good morning everyone, my name is Sahil Advani. Working on our preferred skills today guarantees us a bright path ahead. Listening to our mind, body and soul helps us to be more in touch with goals and what we want to ultimately achieve in life. Being skilled means to be constantly learning and having knowledge beyond of what is expected out of us. Thank you.
Leading from the front means to be able to take critical decisions at the time of crisis. Being skilled means to be able to build our identity through effective communication. Working as a team and bonding together is essential for effective communication.
Simon Sinek once said, "Working hard for something we don't care about is called stress. Working hard for something we love is called passion. And to live a balanced life, we should always do these three things. Do something for the body, something for the mind, and something for the spirit. This helps us stay in touch with our true selves and keep us optimistic."
Having your mind and body perfectly in sync with each other is as important as the coordination between cells of our body for our body to function. It's the small details that makes all the difference, and having the ability to identify these details is a skill that we all must try to nourish and inculcate.
In our busy lives, we need to dedicate some of our time to do something that is close to our heart, something that brings us joy, something that doesn't necessarily have any monetary value attached to itself. Things like these will help us become well-rounded people, something which our world definitely needs.
The youth of today are the building blocks of a future India. If our foundation is not strong enough, then nothing can stop a catastrophic end that is sure to befall us. Knowing any skill, as unimportant as it may seem, is the fundamental to thriving here on earth. Knowing something is always better than nothing.
Will Smith's quote states that skill is only developed by hours and hours and hours of beating on your craft. If you don't try to explore yourself, you will never know what your competencies are. Hence, to live life to the fullest, one must continually look for the ways to enhance and sharpen their skills. And in this journey, failure will be the motivating parts for achieving the desired goals.
Whenever we are lost in an unknown place, using GPS is what comes to our mind first. Just like that, whenever we are lost, our skills are the guiding pillars in our life. Even the GPS apps keeps on updating themselves for the better functioning. So we must make sure that our skills are up to date whenever we face any adversity so that we can come out successfully.
to practice daily on personal and professional goals. Goals help us be motivated and stay on the path to success. It helps us to keep our eyes on the end goal and what we want to make of ourselves.
To be skilled is to learn and unlearn things. We should constantly be learning from things around us and try to let go of things that do us nor others any good. In this modern era, adequately soft and hard skills helps us in getting an edge over others, and we should constantly try in improving them.
To be skilled is to work on your own terms and doing what you love to do and not what everyone else around you is doing. It is to be different from others. A diamond is rarer than others, and having a simple shine is not enough for it to capture the jeweler's attention.
Reveals his story with each note he plays.
To be skilled is to expand someone's capacity of gaining experience about the untold and unheard and nourishing someone's mind to feel and enjoy the simplistic beauty found in the world. There are 7 wonders in the world, but by skilling yourself, you can be the 8th.
To be skilled is to have the right attitude towards life. Many a times in this busy era that's constantly moving, we forget who we are and what we stand for. Staying true to ourselves and our values will always help us move forward in the right path and towards the right destination. In this modern era, having adequate soft and hard skills provides an edge over others.
To be skilled, you need to be persistent. More than hard work, success requires dedication and the will to never give up. Hard work will cut the weeds of your difficulty like a sharp knife.
Hope you all found the video to be insightful. Before we further proceed to the vote of thanks, some general instructions to note. Kindly note that the e-certificates will be awarded only to those participants who have attended and have submitted the feedback form on both the days. The feedback form will be very soon posted on the live chat option, requesting everyone to please fill in. As we have reached the end of the day, I would like to call our skill ambassador, Sahil Advani, to propose the vote of thanks. Over to you, Sahil.
Thank you. Zig Ziglar had said, gratitude is the healthiest of all human emotions. I, Sahil Advani, take immense pleasure in proposing the vote of thanks for today. I would like to start by extending a big thank you to our esteemed resource person of the day 1 of National Skill Convention 22, Ms. Antara Baduri, Ms. Pallavi Tap, Mr. Supratim Chaudhary, and Mr. Soumya Jain for conducting such knowledgeable sessions. I would also like to extend my heartfelt thanks to our principal, Dr. Rishikesh Soman sir, and Vice Principal, Dr. Tessie Thadatil ma'am, for always guiding us throughout our journey. I would like to sincerely thank Dr. Nilofer ma'am, Skill Convention Convener and Head Center for Skill Development, for being the pillar of support and always encouraging us to do better. I would also like to thank Dr. Anil Adagle sir, RUSA Coordinator and Professor in Charge, Dr. Sheena Matthews, Ms. Vaishali Vaidya, Ms. Ashwini Kothari, Ms. Purti Gangal, and Mr. Mohit sir for constantly providing us with their supervisions and valuable assistance. Also, I extend my thanks to our registrar, Ms. Gandhali Parulekar ma'am, and also Mr. Nitin sir and Nazir sir for their constant support. A special thank you to all the skill ambassadors and skill coordinators of Symbiosis Center for Skill Development, who have relentlessly worked for the success of the program. Last but not least, a huge thanks to you all for being such an enthusiastic audience. Thank you and have a wonderful day ahead. Looking forward to have you all tomorrow at 11 a.m. on day 2 of the National Skill Convention 22.